with President Fisher and Dr. Josh Kern, the annual report from the College of Southern Idaho. Oh, I'm sorry, and while you're coming up, yeah, Jen, please.
We had a website update yesterday, which means that the materials on our website, we've had some trouble updating them to make sure the current version is there. We're working through that this morning and expect to have them uploaded sometime in the next few hours. So for those who are watching the board meeting, please bear with us during that time, and we'll do everything we can to make sure you have that information as soon as possible. The materials as posted, of course, the board had access to before any action taken yesterday or today, but we were just having trouble getting them up on our website.
Thanks, Jen. We'll turn it over to you, Mr. President. It is not.
Now? Okay. Even old guys can be taught, I guess. Board Member Kohler, you and I have known each other several years, and I think you and I both share some curmudgeonly traits together.
There are those who would agree.
I won't poll the audience to find out who those are. Well, good morning. For the record, my name is Dean Fisher. I'm president of the College of Southern Idaho, and joining me, and he's capable of introducing himself.
Josh Kern, the current board chair of the College of Southern Idaho.
So thank you. I appreciate the state board carving out time in its meetings throughout the year to learn more about the community colleges. We are half of the system. There are 8 institutions, and 4 of them are the community colleges, and we serve about half of the students in Idaho in post-secondary education. And so I appreciate the opportunity to share with you more about the College of Southern Idaho, and we'll get to that in a moment. If I say that I want to talk about the elephant in the room, people immediately go to think it's a political statement. So I'm going to talk about the hippopotamus in the room, or the rhinoceros in the room, because I want to take a point of personal liberty and just speak a little bit about the In-N-Out Burger and the shooting that happened in Twin Falls on the 1st. The In-N-Out Burger was, I think, 8 days open, and it was the place to be. Raising Cane's had been the place to be a few months before when it was new. And that event on August 1st and in the aftermath has shaken the people of Twin Falls a lot. There's a bit of cognitive dissonance, I think, that my community is going through. You assume that you can just go through normal life and things like that are not going to occur in Twin Falls, Idaho, and we were wrong. One of my employees, an apprentice electrician, was one of the 3 that stood up to the gunman, shot in the shoulder. He's recovering. Several of our employees were physically injured, fleeing. One broke her shoulder. And then a number of employees that were just there with her family on a Saturday, just trying to get a burger and enjoy a little bit of time out. And in all of that aftermath, I've been very proud of the people of Twin Falls, been proud of my employees coming together, supporting their coworkers and supporting the people of Twin Falls as they navigate through this. The college, that afternoon, a few hours after the events, I assure you that the College of Southern Iowa was reaching out to law enforcement to find out how we could help, and there have been a number of ways that we have done so. The police chief for Twin Falls, Chief Hicks, was on campus a couple of days ago. I carved out time in my in-service address. We start next Monday. I carved out time for him, and I thought it was powerful for him to remind us that the majority of all of the law enforcement officers that responded, sheriff or police department, firefighters, paramedics, EMTs, they were all individuals that had been trained by the College of Southern Idaho. So we sometimes forget the importance that we do, because it just becomes another graduating class and then another graduating class. But the majority of those that were responding, the firefighters that were in charge of perimeter control, the folks that were responding, and I want to toss this to Dr. Kern, because there's also after that how healthcare was responding, and I think that we sometimes don't talk enough about the positive impact that we do. I know we do it in a very sort of academic statistical way, but it was very real and personal a couple of mornings ago when I realized the chief we couldn't have done what we did if it wasn't for the college doing what you do. Dr. Kern?
Yeah, good morning. As mentioned, professionally, I'm a physician and now serve as the Chief Medical Officer for St. Luke's, Magic Valley, Jerome, and Wood River. So St. Luke's is broken into a regional structure, and I'm the Regional Chief Medical Officer. So obviously the impact on the hospital was real that day, and as President Fisher mentioned, the majority of the nurses working in the hospital on that day were trained by College of Southern Idaho, and it's an anecdote I've shared many times that one night on a Sunday night I was on call over the weekend at the hospital, and we had our board meeting the next day. So I asked the night shift, this was in the Jerome Hospital where I've practiced for 18 years, I asked the night shift nurses how many of them had got their training at the College of Southern Idaho. 9 out of 9. The next day, because of course you transition into the morning, the day shift came on at 7 a.m. and I asked them how many had gotten their training at the College of Southern Idaho. It was 9 out of 10. You have one extra nurse in the ER during the day. So I think that illustrates the point of how dependent our community is on the College of Southern Idaho, the benefit it brings. And, frankly, Magic Valley Hospital is a hospital that was just put on the Forbes 5-star list, kind of an elite group of hospitals when considering quality outcomes. College of Southern Idaho is intimately wound around that axle of the quality care that we provide at the hospital. Couldn't be more proud of the response we had that day. I gave an interview for the Times News and illustrated that a couple hours after that shooting event, we had a massive car accident out on the freeway, and we just had to turn around and take care of those patients. It's kind of relentless. It's kind of never ending. And after an event like that, the relationship between our community and College of Southern Idaho can't be forgotten.
And at the risk of trying to have the last word, I'm going to also provide credit. St. Luke's is funding a part-time nursing program as well. So we have full-time nursing cohorts going through the year, graduates in fall and spring. And when you go to a nursing pinning, 40 are there, and I'm going to dare say that 35 are saying that they're going to work at St. Luke's somewhere at one of its locations. And to sort of build the vision out of how we do more to prepare the nursing workforce, St. Luke stepped up a few years ago and said, we'll help with a part-time cohort and we'll help pay for the faculty to do that. So we've got, it's an anecdote, I don't think I can amplify it out, but the number of traveling nurses at St. Luke's is down to just a handful of people, dramatically saving them money and assuring that the patient care is there, not in a transactional way of whoever's flown into town that week, but they're being produced very locally. Okay. It's not changing slides. There we go. Thank you, Dr. Kern. The College of Southern Idaho just turned 60 this last year, and we are assigned an 8-county service region. There are 2 counties in those 8 that tax themselves, Twin Falls County and Jerome. And as you already know, you have authority over the academic mission of the institution. Locally, we have a 5-member board of trustees elected representing 5 zones that are roughly equivalent in population. Something that North Idaho College does and we do is we've got some ancillary functions. And so we'll certainly talk about the rest of the institution, but we've got some ancillary functions that are also important ways that we serve. The College of Southern Idaho is the fiduciary managing entity for Head Start locations throughout the Magic Valley. And we have a Head Start location in American Falls. It's the furthest that we get to the east, but American Falls and then throughout the Magic Valley. So we serve very, very diminutive learners along the way. And I try and get out at least once a year to those Head Start locations. And the 3-year-olds are very cute and high energy, and usually I fail when they want to play red light, green light with me. But we have also the Office on Aging that provides congregate meal, delivered meals. That's what most people associate. They also do senior protective services, a variety of parenting training. They do more than just the meals. We have a statewide function for motorcycle safety. It's funded through a small fee on motorcycle tags and licenses. But you could find CSI employees through Star Motorcycle and Sandpoint providing motorcycle training, Nampa, Eastern Idaho, and then we also have a small business development center as well. Next. It's the other way, yeah. And so to give you some geographic perspective, that number 4 is our assigned service region. Twin Falls and Jerome are the 2 counties that tax themselves. We have an additional location at Burley, and that the Mini-Casia Center, along with what we'll be doing in a much more improved venue in Jerome, and then of course the main campus there in Twin Falls is where our primary operations are. We historically had locations in Gooding and also in Haley. Those have been shuttered over the last several years. Frankly, they were built and established in a time when microwave transmission of a class from Twin to a fixed location in Haley was the norm. That was the modality of the 70s and the 80s. Online learning, Zoom technology, it just made those financially not viable to continue in the same way, but we haven't lost learners in those counties. It's just a different modality for the way that that's delivered to them. I'm going to acknowledge that I stole this concept of the word "the" and its importance from an ad for Blue Cross of Texas. And I was down there and heard an ad, and I thought, you know, I love the way that they're framing the use of the word "the." It's placed as a descriptor, a definitive article for things that are one of a kind. It's not the college, usually it's a college. But we are the college of Southern Idaho. Because if you get on the interstate, and I do from time to time, and drive east or west, it's 129 miles to get to Boise. It's about 115 for me to get to Pocatello. And if you start driving north and you look for an institution of higher education, well, when you get to Stanley, you haven't found one. And if you keep trying to drive north after you get to Stanley, then you are an adventurer that is impressive. We are the college of Southern Idaho. And as a result, that means that we do many things. We provide cultural enrichment. We provide workforce training. We are the. If you look at the Treasure Valley, you look at Eastern Idaho, there are multiple institutions of higher education. The same is true in the north. I'm very proud of the fact that we are the institution of higher education, and I think we do that splendidly. As a result, since we do not offer more than one baccalaureate degree, we look for partnerships, and I'll talk about that more also in the presentation. But in our Hepworth building, we have a higher education center. All of the public institutions of higher education are represented in some way with physical offices on our campus. I'm very proud of the work that we're doing with Idaho State to build out face-to-face learning opportunities for students. President Wagner, I think we've got 8 programs right now, face-to-face, and we'll continue to explore that. University of Idaho, I'm excited, is adding criminal justice face-to-face instruction to the college. Lewis Clark, we've partnered with them on education pathways and nursing. Very excited to work with President Hahn in the coming year to build out opportunities from Boise State. We also have a partnership with Western Governors University that is serving in a very robust way as well. Before I talk about the modern reality of transfer, I do want to talk about, President Wagner mentioned this yesterday. As a result of participating in the Aspen Institute's initiative for transfer institutions, we are building out, I truly will use the word seamless in a very intentional and sincere way. We are building out a seamless, best decision, one good decision pathway for students that they can start with us, seamlessly move to ISU. The technology will connect and talk to each other. And I'm just excited. It was, our initiative was one of two recognized by the Aspen Institute as among the best in the nation. And as President Wagner mentioned, the Lumina Foundation is coming alongside that and building out the technology to support it. The other with the modern reality of transfer, and I will seek to say this with respect. Policy 3Z tries to speak to how the 8 institutions of higher education work with each other in terms of transfer. The reality of the year 2026 is that if students can't find good partnerships that we've built, there are 4,000 institutions of higher education across the country and online learning. So I think it's incumbent upon us and you to find ways to solve transfer within our state in efficient ways. And I'm proud of what we're doing with the, I'll call them the senior institutions. But if we don't find those solutions, I think it's premature for us to think that a board policy prevents students from going and finding that in Nebraska or Mississippi or wherever else. And so I think the incumbent responsibility of all of us is to figure out how we get over the turf wars and find solutions that work for Idahoans. Thanks. We've got some new facilities that are coming our way that are either recently open or about to open, like tomorrow, and then others that are coming. The college has taxed Jerome County for 60 years. And the primary way that we've served that is through an old Zions Bank building at Main and Lincoln in downtown Jerome. It's maybe 1,000 square feet. And we couldn't put classes there that exceeded 10 because that was the physical size of the classrooms that we had been able to design there. Tomorrow morning at 9 a.m., Dr. Kern and I and others will be joining together to cut the ribbon on the new Leroy Craig Jerome Center. It's a 20,000 square foot workforce training center. There's also going to be academic functions there. And in ways that Jerome has never experienced, we'll be able to serve them. There's classrooms there, training rooms that will be supporting food, industry, meat. True West is just down the road.
Don't steal my anecdote.
Oh,
Yeah.
I think I'm going to be quiet because there's an anecdote.
I saw a patient a number of years ago when True West was opening, and I asked this person, "How are the conditions over there?" And she's like, "It's pretty busy. It's pretty hectic. The worst part, and the thing that is so dangerous, is trying to learn how to cut the meat in the environment because the meat cutting is just ongoing continuously, and so trying to learn it in this loud, busy environment is very difficult." So one of the classrooms we have in the Leroy Craig Jerome Center is allowing True West to then teach people in a controlled environment that has the stainless steel flooring and conditions to be able to be cleaned, how to cut the meat safely. So this is an example of the relationship between CSI and our business partners to meet the needs of training broadly beyond even the degree programs.
Thank you, Dr.
I had
Kern.
that one ready, so yeah.
That's good. So yes, meat cutting, trades and industry, apprenticeship activity, a healthcare classroom, pending, I hope, positive notification of receipt of some rural healthcare money. We'll establish in partnership with ISU a respiratory therapy program in the Magic Valley. And I have challenged the people of Jerome, and I've challenged my team, fill up that 20,000 square feet and then challenge me to go build more. But right now I'm very excited for the future of that. think let's switch slides. The Transportation Technology Center came online in January. I believe Superintendent Critchfield was at that opening. And it allows us to expand the capacity of all of our diesel technology programs, so big truck diesel, ag diesel. We also will be, next Monday, introducing high school students from the Magic Valley also into early pathways in diesel technology. And I'm just excited that we are able to do this. As a result of moving diesel into this building, new building, we're also, by next fall, going to be able to double our automotive technology capacity, because when you move folks, you free up capacity elsewhere. And so this building, funded with state dollars, it's provided an exciting way that we can serve the Valley in diesel technology expansion and then automotive technology expansion. That's about 6 weeks old. It's a picture of the Lower Craig Jerome Center. We now have landscaping and sod, and it's all finished and ready to open to the public. And if you're in Jerome or over our way and you want to tour the new facility, give me a holler and we'll be happy to show you around. It's going to be a dramatic transformation for Jerome and how we serve them. Next. I'll never know the city attorney for Twin Falls in the late 1950s because he's passed away, but the deed that the city of Twin Falls provided to the Guard to build an armory included a provision that when it ceases to be an armory, that the land and the improvements thereupon will revert to the city, and the city has assigned the armory to us. And so we will be able to, in the coming years, expand out a variety of academic programs. Now, it's an armory, so it's not going to be a fine arts center. It's not going to be other things. But I do have a vision that we can do workforce training and a variety of CTE programs in this space. It's going to be a dramatic expansion. We'll get it probably in January of next year. We'll have to figure out how we invest some capital in it to modernize it into a learning space. But I'm excited that we've got some additional instructional space coming online in probably about a year. Next. There's a lady named Katie Breckenridge, and the Breckenridge family were early farmers and ranchers in the Magic Valley. And part of the Breckenridge gift to the college early on was provide us 40 acres. It's an endowment farm adjacent to the main campus. And so our students that are in ag-related majors, they don't just learn in the classroom, they learn by doing. It's one of the few community colleges I know of in the nation that has an endowment farm attached to the college where students can learn by doing. And we actually have a new dimension to the Breckenridge Endowment Farm. I think it was U.S. Bank. If I got that wrong, somebody will remind me later. But we received a gift to build a barn on the property, and now we have small ruminants. So board member Sidaway, we have sheep. Yes, and so we don't have enough land to run cattle on that, but we do have sheep, small ruminants, so we're adding to the dimensions for what our students can learn. The slide is 2020 forward, and this helps you to get a sense for the enrollment growth that we've been experiencing. 2020, I chose that because that's the year that I arrived, and that was the pandemic year. We actually grew slightly in 2020 despite the pandemic, and we've continued to grow in each ensuing fall, except for a flattening out last fall. But I am proud to tell you that I've already seen the enrollment report for the full year. We were up 3% for this current academic year, and the 18,277 students is how many we served in an unduplicated way for this academic year that just concluded. This gives you a sense for fall semesters. One of the interesting challenges that we've had, and Dr. Kern and I both have obligations at this event, is we've gotten pretty good at getting students through efficiently, graduating them on time. We have record numbers of students graduating. And so it's a conundrum sometimes. You want good, healthy enrollment, but you want students to succeed. And when you get them out more quickly, that means that you're recruiting a new class. I think the next slide shows you a bit with degree completion. We graduated 1,402 students this last year with 1,562 credentials. The biggest venue that I've got on campus is the gym. And we opted several years ago to do that graduation in our fine arts auditorium. And so as a result of the number of people that were graduating and the limitations of venue, we do 5 graduation ceremonies. And so it's an endurance race to do it over and over and over. Dr. Kern, do you want to say anything about that?
No, it is kind of first world problem though.
Yeah, it's a great problem, but I will mention a couple of things. I can be stubborn. I acknowledge that. And my vice president for instruction back there, I'm sure she's nodding like a bobblehead at this moment. Yes, he can be. Yeah, and you are too. But one of the things in 2021 that I just couldn't surrender the idea that we take physical graduation away from students. I wanted a physical graduation. Now, we had limitations from the governor about capacity, how many people we could put in a venue, and we had some social distancing things that were directed by the public health district. But my team came back to me and said, we can do physical graduations, but President, we'll need to do 12 ceremonies. We did 12 ceremonies in May of 21, over and over and over. Now, I eliminated commencement speakers from that, and we made them smaller, efficient. But I was very proud of the fact that students at the College of Southern Idaho got to physically walk across the stage, have guests, and we just did it 12 times over a Friday and a Saturday. And probably the most touching commencement ceremony that we've ever done is a few years ago, one of our faculty members approached me and said, President, you don't know, but we have a student that would graduate in May, but she's terminal. And I said, well, I'm not going to do a posthumous degree. And so we accelerated out the conferral of a degree to a single student with pretty much a full court press ceremony 3 weeks earlier. And she did actually make it to finals week, and then a couple of weeks later passed away. But if I can award a degree rather than do a posthumous degree, I'm going to do it. And so commencement ceremonies are really important as public affirmations for the success that our students have achieved. Now, I like music, and there's a song called Tin Man. Oz didn't give anything to the Tin Man that the Tin Man didn't already have. So we don't make our students smart. We activate and support the learning, and the achievement is theirs. We get to see it, but the achievement is theirs. And I'm just delighted that we have such healthy, robust commencements, because it means that we're doing something right. Next. So because it, I'm sure, would be a curious item, these are the top programs of study. The next slide will be CTE programs, but just focusing on this, health science is holding very firm. It's completely clear to me that we are the provider of health science in the Magic Valley and the Wood River Valley. That's not just nursing. We do surge tech, we do dental hygiene. There's a variety of other ways that we develop that. And if you'll turn to the next slide, in CTE, business management, entrepreneurship has been consistent. Accounting, bookkeeping has been consistent. Welding technology, cyber, all of these other things are they sort of float, but we are we're doing well. We're doing well. Next slide. Yeah. Beyond the ancillary functions that I described, the college is a partner in Southern Idaho economic development. It's a partnership with the business community, the cities and the counties and the college to support economic development in the region. There are so many employer partnerships we could talk about. I was proud to announce about a year ago the Chobani Scholars Program. We continue to work with employers in the region, and I don't think people fully understand how important ag is. Sometimes you just drive through and you see signs that say that there's Twin Falls or there's Jerome. We have about 250,000 people in that region 4, that 8-county service region. There's about 550,000 cows. With Chobani, the largest yogurt manufacturing facility in the world is there, and they're adding 1 million square feet of production space to that largest facility. Between Idaho Milk, High Desert, Jerome Cheese, I could just keep going on down the list. To quote Celia Gould, who was the Idaho State Department of Ag director for many years and the legislature before then, the Magic Valley is the epicenter of ag. And I know others want to claim that, but I think we've got the data to prove it. So I think it goes back to the meaning of the, and as far as bragging rights, just because of time, we've got wonderful athletic programs, and they win a lot, and they go to regional and national championships. Our faculty and our staff are regularly recognized by regional and national organizations. Our speech and debate team actually has more wins nationally and regionally than our athletic program. If the athletic folks are watching online, they're not going to like me saying that, but our speech and debate team, competing against universities and community colleges, regularly win nationally. I could probably stay here all day, and I won't, talking about how many of our employees are in city, community, national organizations and leadership roles. It's a very wonderful place to be at, the College of Southern Idaho, and I'd be happy to stand for any questions that you've got.
Questions for President Fisher or Dr. Kern? Debbie.
Thank you. I'm always like a proud parent with you whenever we talk about the College of Southern Idaho. I have the same question for you that I had for President Barber yesterday, related to just other changes with dual credit, advanced opportunities with IDLA. If you're accommodating, adjusting, seeing more enrollment in those areas. And I know you already have an explosion of dual credit previously, but if that looks any different.
Yeah, thank you, Superintendent Critchfield, for the question. It was a little bit more seamless for us to handle what was going on with IDLA perhaps than others, and I can't speak for others, but in 2020, when I was arriving, one of the things that I learned was that we were not allowing high school students to enroll into some of our online or face-to-face courses. And frankly, we had capacity. And if there's an empty seat in a classroom, we should be able to leverage it for high school students to go ahead and learn as well. So obviously there's the traditional notions about dual credit taught by a high school student aligned with college learning objectives. And we still do that. But one of the things that we've done since 2020 is if someone can physically get to the campus or participate in an online course, if they're in high school and they're appropriately qualified, meeting prerequisites, they can do that too. So we've been allowing high school students to enroll into our courses directly, charging them the dual credit rate. And we've not done that always through IDLA. Sometimes it's just been, if you're in Kimberly and you want to come take a college algebra class, drive over to the college and you can do it. So it's been relatively seamless for us to signal to the high school counselors and others, here's what you can already do. Now, I acknowledge that a student in Richfield and Lincoln County might not be able to as conveniently get to the campus. As long as they've got broadband, online courses are available to them as well. Does that answer the question?
Add
Additional
one,
questions?
my junior daughter starts her first dual credit next week.
What's she taking? You can't remember, okay.
Any additional questions?
Bill.
Oh, David?
Not a question, just a comment. President Fisher, your comment on 3Z is noted and not unappreciated. So that's something we talk about regularly. It's probably the one policy I don't have to look up.
There's a book that maybe Board Member Turnbull you've read or not. If not, I commend it to you, and if you want, I'll get you a copy of it. But it's called The Great Upheaval, and it talks about sort of what's happening in higher education and the disruption. And physically, we don't bank the same, we don't plan travel the same, we don't, frankly, find a blockbusters, we don't access entertainment or music in the same way. And so educators can be incredibly slow to change. Every commencement we show up in monastic gowns, we prove that we don't like to change. And so the disruption in the way that higher education is accessed and the way it works is something that we just have to adapt and evolve into that new space. And I'll just use an anecdote that in Colorado, some of the colleges, community colleges and universities weren't evolving fast enough into this new paradigm. The state legislature gave authority to the Denver public schools to award college degrees. You're not figuring it out fast enough, so the Denver public schools have the authority to award associate and applied sciences degrees and get people ready for the workforce. It's incumbent upon us to figure it out, or others will figure it out for us.
Well, I've either evolved or devolved into ebooks, so send me a link, not a physical book. Thank you.
Chair Gilbert, if I may.
Yeah, please.
I think to that point, I commend you are always such a great partner in terms of thinking about how we innovate in the system, and I think this board has really created the foundation from which we can succeed in that regard. You know, Idaho led out on open access to applications and, you know, creating a system from which I think we can really start to build or continue to build on the good work of this board. So we have been transformational in a variety of ways, and I think the continued partnership that you've been able to demonstrate and the innovation in that partnership is a real inspiration, and we'll certainly build upon that. So I think there's a lot of good things to come based on the work that this board has done historically, and look forward to working on that with you and in partnership with our four-year institutions as well.
And thank you for continuing to set the tone of partnership and solving problems. And so I thank the board members and the board office for that.
Any others? Oh, Pete, thank you.
Thank you, Dean. And I was given that book by Senator Lent
Okay.
and read it a while ago.
You just saved me about $25 to get that one to you.
Yeah. Took me a while to get through it. I'm a slow reader. I brood on these things. And I look back when I was somewhat younger, and frankly, the difficulty we even had for dual credit, getting a high school student who took a class at CSI to have that credit accepted at another university or another school. So we have moved in a long direction. So I do think that we are moving in a direction that is serving the state and serving the families, as opposed to parochial, territorial, and don't question what I do. Education does move slow. In fact, sometimes I'm surprised at a group that refuses change, my opinion. So anyway, my 2 cents on that. My only other question is, have we got the fish system back up operating?
I'm sorry, I barely heard the
The
question.
trout. Are we back online with the trout?
Back online with what?
We'll speak later.
Okay.
Bill, I know when you
I think as I get older, my hearing is going, and I apologize for that. The one thing that I'll mention about dual credit, though, is everyone acts like it's a new thing. William Rainey Harper, the president of the University of Chicago, when he established through his efforts Joliet Junior College the first, it was to push the first 2 years back into the high schools. because they were ready to learn. Everyone acts like it's a big new thing, but it's rooted in the very beginnings of community colleges in the United States. It's not a new thing.
Kelly?
Bill, I know we need to move on, but I just wanted to thank you for being here. I'm a proud graduate of CSI, and it's helped many members of my family and many other families, and it really is the cultural hub, and it's just the hub of the Magic Valley and the area, and so incredibly important. And I really appreciate the four-year institutions partnering. I was able to live in Twin Falls, get my associate degree, bachelor's degree, and my master's degree while living in the Twin Falls area. So that's the type of thing that can really impact people's lives, and really appreciate what you do.
If Vice President Gilbert will give me 45 seconds, and then I'll be quiet. So Board Member Roach speaks to her being an alum. As part of the 60th anniversary, we established an Alumni Hall of Fame, and Board Member Callie Roach was one of those early inductees into the Hall of Fame for her record of public service to the state of Idaho. And I say record, and I'm not saying it in a past tense because it continues into the present tense as well. But congratulations, Callie. That alum status was recognized with the Alumni Hall of Fame. Thank you.
Very cool. Well, thank you both. We appreciate you coming here, especially Dr. Kern. We know how busy you are at St. Luke's. Thank you for doing this. Okay, we will move forward to the Idaho Department of Education updates. I'll turn it to the superintendent.
Thank you. There's 4 items I wanted to give brief updates to the board. And of course, if there's questions associated with them, that is great. And then we've got 2 action items on the agenda. As you know, we've been engaging the public at large, Idahoans, on where we go with funding for our public schools. And over the summer, in addition to going around the state with Senator Lent and meeting with communities at large, we also engaged smaller group discussions. And I will be sending to the board a compilation of all of those things in a summary. As you would expect, there were clear themes. And I don't know that any of those themes will surprise anyone that's been paying attention to this over the last few years. To share some of those themes, one of them that we heard consistently was having a way to understand it in a more simple way. And so I think that seems to be a running part of this. It is a very complex way that we do it. There are reasons why it's complex based on how things were established, really starting in the 60s, and then the biggest change coming in the 90s, which I know for some of us feels like that was just a couple years ago, but it wasn't. And so as we look at the many choices that are available within the public school arena, we're trying to put everyone into the same box and then kind of scratch our heads as to why everyone's frustrated by it. So looking at something that's more simple, something that's more predictable, not only for our local districts and charters for their long-term budgeting, but I also think the predictability is critical for our legislature as appropriators. I can imagine, just like our school leaders, that it's very frustrating year after year to just sort of see, well, what's the number going to be this year? And so we're looking to have something that would be more predictable. I think we, along the lines or attached to predictable, we need something that is more sustainable as we look at where we're going, again, with all the options that are available within the public realm. How do we continue to manage this in a way so that as new schools come online or, and not, well, I guess that's figurative and literal, come online and available in communities, that we're not continuing to slice the same pie. And that's been a frustration, I think, across the board. The question that we asked our friends and neighbors and others that we met with centered on what do you value in education? I don't believe that just putting money into something for the sake of giving more money is going to get us to the student outcomes that we're looking for. We need the dollars to be aligned to the priorities and dollars aligned to the needs of our students, which was another theme that we heard. Having our dollars represent the types of students that are being educated in the environments that they are, whether that is special education, whether that's gifted and talented, career technical, rural schools. And so in a state like ours that is geographically spread out, you have 70% of our schools that are defined as rural, but 60% of our students live in 2 districts in the most urban area. And so if this were easy, we would have already figured it out. Now, there are things that we are figuring out and have along the way. Certainly, we look at what we've already done. We look at what other states have done or are trying to do. And then we talk with our own people to understand how we get there. And then the task is to go about prioritizing with the resources that we have. Another theme that we heard that, again, will not be surprising to you, a frustration from both the school side and the local taxpayer side around supplemental levies. I think there's been a confusion as to why districts are asking on top of what the state has sent. Well, the state's given more money in these areas, or has given more money overall in the public schools budget, which is true. How come you're still coming back to supplement what's going on? And there are also needs associated with that. And I'm hopeful and encouraged that there's a momentum around this conversation like I haven't felt in a very long time. I know it's been a pretty active conversation, probably at least 10 years now. And having folks turn up in the middle of the summer in the evening to talk about what makes sense in their community tells me a couple of things. One, it tells me that Idahoans value education, and that matters. And number 2, it tells me that there's enough attention to this issue that it's not just, hey, Debbie keeps talking about it, or this superintendent keeps talking about it, or the Board of Education keeps talking about it. We have our citizens talking about it. So next steps will be to work with Senator Lent, who's the chair of Senate Ed, and Representative Hawkins, who's the chair of House Ed, and so a handful of other legislators who've been working on this for a while, and build a model that could then go to the legislature for their view, attention, discussion, and hopeful action. And I think when we look at what needs to happen, I am not, I'm right-sizing my own expectations that we're not going to tackle all of the things that we need to do in one budget cycle. But we can build something and establish a framework that provides a map for our legislature, and I'm really thinking about how the career ladder was handled. That was something that was built on over time. This is where we want to be, and here's what we need to do to get there over time. And I think that's something that will feel, maybe provide a little more comfort knowing that we can't do all the things at one time. And so that's where we are as far as next steps, sitting down in the next couple of weeks, like I say, with the chairs and working with legislators. They will ultimately make the final decision. We do want input at that. Of course, we'll be at the table, and of course we care what you think, we care what the governor thinks, and seeing how we put all of this together.
Questions? I guess it sounds to me you'll remember as well as I do, or better, and you've spent way more time on it, but coming out of the 19 task force, the number one thing that Kurt and his group let out was more flexibility. It sounds like that's what you're talking about. Like that was our number one recommendation, if you remember, and less line item, more flexibility out of the budget task force. So that's sort of the summation of what you're saying.
Yes, and that would be another theme in there, would be that flexibility. The line items, although important in providing funds in certain areas don't align with the 21st century classroom now. And so it limits the local authority to move any, you can't move those dollars around. And if you don't have those needs, then you've got to figure out in your operations how you're going to come up with that or supplement through your local tax base.
Good. Additional comments or questions? No? Please move forward.
We'll be sending things either to Lisa and Jen to get out to everybody that way. Speaking of funding, and because of where we are, I feel like I'm in a unique position with the public schools budget this year, where we need to have a budget turned in by September 1st while we're deciding what it is we want to do. And so I'm less inclined to perpetuate elements of the existing budget, like line items, knowing we want to get away from that, so I don't want to, anyway, you get it. Also recognizing that coming off of this last budget cycle, we were very fortunate and appreciative that public schools weren't reduced right out of the gate. Obviously, with the cost of operations, it's not cost neutral to our districts and charters, but there wasn't money taken out of the public schools budget in that way, and we're very appreciative. But we know we're kind of coming off of that year and not anticipating, a ton of new money, and so we're taking a look at the budget. What can we do as a transition year, recognizing that the number one area that we heard from districts and charters was around operations, which in the budget is the discretionary part of the budget. I get away from saying discretionary because that implies that that's sort of like, we'll just kind of decide whatever it is we want to do with that money. And I guess technically that is true, but trust me, those monies are slated for in a number of ways. And so it's been 3 years since there was any new dollars coming into the discretionary part of the budget. And that is something that everyone receives. That's not an area where some will say, hey, we don't like this, we like that. So looking at the existing budget, trying to see where we can create more space for operations with the money that we have. That's been a talking point that I've had for years, that if we're looking at line items and we're looking at some of these areas, how do we maximize the appropriation that we have? I think that is, for me, the very first starting place, and then understanding where are places that we need to supplement. If we can move the existing money around to the needs, the priority needs, then you can go back in and say, oh yes, we do need more money in some of these areas. And so we're a couple weeks away from having that put together and see what all of that looks like. The third item I wanted to mention, once new legislation went into place July 1, and some of the action that we took yesterday relative to rules was a response to new legislation. But there are some things where the board doesn't have to create a rule, but the language may lead to a variety of interpretations at the local level. And so we, over the summer, will put together guidance for districts on a variety of things to help provide them extra help with their local board and their local attorney. We always say, you have an attorney, you need to consult with them. But there's a number of things that we've worked to get some guidance together on how to do this, that, or the other. And I know we had worked with Jen. The rule related to, the changes with women's sports, there is rules around that, but we're also working on some guidance with our K-12 folks so that they have I guess using the sports theme, a playbook that they can go to have some more thought about how they handle some of these situations. And it's not something they have to do, but it is something that we get asked about year after year. You'll recall, different things that go into place, like displaying the national motto, The moment of silence would be another example that's coming up of, this is what we know the intent of the legislation was. Here are ways that we believe satisfy that. Districts can choose to look at it or not, but for those that are interested, it's something that we make available.
Chair Gilbert, if I may. Superintendent Critchfield, I just wanted to thank your team for the work that you all did with us on that rule, but also I think just to emphasize your point again, there's only so much we can do in rules sometimes, and sometimes it is really much more appropriate for us to provide guidance and work with our locally controlled institutions or schools to implement those rules as we kind of live in the experience of that moment. And so I'm grateful for the partnership that we've had there. And I think this most recent rule is going to be a prime example of why guidance can often be more beneficial than just more enhanced pages to the administrative code. So thank you for that.
Thank you. And it, again, good to work to have the uniformity of knowing the Board of Education, and there's not separate information coming from somewhere else, but it's a good unified voice. I also wanted to, on the last item, just as an update, check back in with you on where are we with the federal waivers. And so once the board in the spring approved the ability to move forward to get the waivers in place, we heard back on a couple of the waivers that were received. There are 2 others that are about to be turned in next month. One is on the 3rd grade assessments, having 1 3rd grade test, as we've worked with the testing vendors to make sure that we are capturing all of the standards that are required at the federal level. They don't care what the test is. They don't care when, they don't care elements of that. That's, something that we decide. They want to make sure that we are testing according to our standards and that we're capturing all of those. And so we've been working this summer with the vendors, the 2 that we've had for 2 tests, to put them together in a way that's not just one gigantic test now, but how do we streamline both of those tests where we are covering the standards but also reducing the overall amount of time, but making it statistically relevant. And so the smarter than me data people have gone to work to be able to do that. And so we feel like we're very close in being able to submit that, along with the returning education to the states waiver. This is a waiver that came about in this latest administration that allows the local districts and charters to combine their federal funds in ways that they haven't been able to do, and allows our board to approve things without going to the federal government to ask for their approval. So if a district had a really fantastic idea of how to combine their federal funds to help their students with outcomes or professional development, there's areas that they could or can do that. They would come to us and we'd have to say, well, we need to go ask the federal government to see this, that, or the other. With the returning education to the states waiver, that will give this board and the department authority to make those decisions and allow those local decisions to be put to use in ways that really satisfy the specific needs of communities. And I think it's a good way to leverage those federal dollars for outcomes. I'm probably going to get this wrong. I think there are 7 states, it's possibly 8, that have applied for and received this waiver. And so Idaho would be among the first 10, I can say that confidently, in the country to be able to receive the waiver. And so I appreciate the support of the board in being able to move forward with that. And there's some public comment requirements that are out right now associated with that waiver, and once those comments come back, then we're going to be able to send both of those things off and see where we land. So I'm excited about that. So again, thank you for the support there. All right, moving along then to our action items. The first one that we have is actually, it's not an action item. It's an informational item on our mathematics instructional guide. I want to remind the board that in April of this year, we did approve the state math comprehensive plan. It's similar in purpose and design to our comprehensive literacy plan, and it's intended to set the programming for how our districts go about selecting curriculum, professional development, best practices for teachers, the implementation. And because of that comprehensive plan, it really is a living document, a strategic plan to guide. And we've done the same thing at this board level with math. And so the instructional guide that's included in your materials, it really is intended to be a companion piece for implementation, a resource to support. Here's the plan, here's the guidance of how to implement it and how to make it work. Because we can talk all day long about all the great ideas that are out there and this, that, or the other, and come up with a lot of fantastic strategies. But if our local leaders and teachers don't know how to use it in the classroom, then it's just a document that sits on the shelf. And so we want our educators to have clear guidance around evidence-based mathematics instruction. This is something that is a priority for this board. It's a priority in our state, and we want this to be a statewide resource so that we can have that common vision for effective math instruction across the state. And if you have very specific questions about it or want specific examples, we've got Dr. Thunstrom, I believe, somewhere maybe online to help with that. Okay.
Are there questions?
Oh, there we go.
Pete?
Not so much a question as a request for the board. And with this, Deb, I read it. You guys have done a tremendous job. Cindy did a wonderful job putting that together. I would like to do a review in a year and see where we are with it. I'm very interested in what steps teacher preparation has taken to meet this need. And then just always, for an old man's cautionary note, we never take our eyes off of K3 reading. This isn't just, okay, that's over, now we're going to worry about math. But I very much would like to know in a year's time what the universities, what the colleges have done to prep teachers for this next step and how it fits into the daily curriculum that the children go through. I would like to have that, Bill, if we could, a year from now as a report that comes in, what has been done, and then at another time, a conversation on the measurements that are going to be used, just as we do tied to the IRI. Where is our start? Where is our end point? How are we tracking this through? These are things that I don't want us to take our eyes off of.
Thank you. We agree. We say that we're accelerating our attention to math, but we're not losing the focus and attention on literacy. We're bringing the same strategies that have been successful for us. We've got the highest K3 reading rate since 2007, and those are not accidental. Those are intentional strategies, and so we want to use that same type of model over into the world of math, and so we're anxious to be able to report back.
Again, I think two things. One, that aligns with where you set out the trail that you blazed in 19 with where we would start, right? Focus on literacy, then, and Pete, for your benefit for the task force, if you'll remember, going to literacy first and then attacking math, but we're not losing. And then second, I think a debt is, or some credit needs to go to Linda Clark for being deeply involved, I know, in the creation of this. And so I want to make sure that that's acknowledged as well. Any other comments or questions on?
Not on this item.
Okay. Anyone? All right.
All right. So now for our action items. In front of the board is a request to adopt the Praxis Steps modular assessment pathway. It's a lot of words there for educator candidates. And so as you know, or will refresh in your memory that to obtain a standard instructional certificate, a teacher applicant must demonstrate proficiency in their requested endorsement area. And so for that, an Idaho teacher certification in our state, candidates need to complete the praxis exam. And what we're proposing here is that the praxis steps is a, like the name says, modular approach to completion of the content areas. So it allows the candidate to take the praxis test over time so that they can bank the results along the way. Initially, this praxis steps will only be available for elementary education fundamentals, and the board approved the adoption of this content area in cut scores last year. And so we presented this, I guess, pathway to the Professional Standards Committee, and the PSC did vote in favor of it, and so their recommendation is for board approval as well. And you can also, within this assessment pathway, an applicant can take the progress path or a targeted retake pathway. So I think the simple way to put this is that we are trying to, in the different ways to satisfy the requirements for a teacher certificate, it opens up some options for those that the one way may not fit. If we get to the same finish line and you need to take, a different road to get there, then we're okay with that. We've got some folks online, Dr. Thunstrom and Greg. If there's any specific questions, I can go right to motion if you want to do that, or however you want to open it up, Mr. Chair.
Are there any questions? Yeah, please go to motion.
Okay. I move to approve the Praxis Steps module assessment pathway for approved Praxis content area assessments for teacher certification.
It's been moved. Is there a second? Seconded by Cindy. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes.
All right, thank you. Our next, and I think last, actually, yes, action item is on curricular materials review. And just as a quick review of what you're looking at or what you have in front of you in some form, by statute, curriculum review and adoption process is in Idaho code and on a review cycle. And this work is conducted by a curricular materials selection committee, and there are 108 content area specialists and 11 committee members in the review. I'm not going to read down every single one, although I can if you want me to, but the subject areas that are included in this 2026 review, actually I'm just going to go down them really quickly. K-12 Arts and Humanities, K-12 World Languages, K-12 Computer Applications, K-12 Computer Science, 9 through 12 Digital Literacy, Driver's Education, and then there's a list of career and technical education areas: agriculture, welding, ag, small engine repair, plant and soil, business management, network support, programming and software development, cosmetology, nursing, assisting, and electronics, technology, aircraft maintenance, and welding. These people are tired. I know. And so the why of this is that it ensures that all of our Idaho school districts and charter schools, when they go to make their local decision for purchasing material, that it is a high quality material, and we want to guarantee that at the lowest contract price for the length of the adoption cycle, and making sure that their choices of instructional material meet our standards, and we help them with informed decision making.
Questions?
All right, I'll go to motion.
Please.
Thank you. The motion is about as long as everything I said. I should have just said the motion. All right, I move to approve the recommendations of the Curricular Materials Selection Committee to adopt curricular materials and related instructional materials provided in Attachment 1 for the following content areas: Arts and Humanities K-12, World Languages K-12, Computer Applications K-12, Computer Science K-12, Digital Literacy 9-12, Driver Education and Career and Technical Education, Agriculture, Welding, Ag, Small Engine Repair, Plant and Soil, Business Management, Network Support, Programming and Software Development, Cosmetology, Nursing, Assisting, Electronics Technology, Aircraft Maintenance, and Welding.
Ben moved. Is there a second? Seconded by David. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
And that concludes the agenda, Mr. Chair.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
We will, before we head into the work session, take a break. We'll come back at 9:20 to give a little bit. I think this work session might take a little bit longer, so we want to give it plenty of time. So with that, we'll break for a moment.
Check 1, 2. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Check, check 1, 2.
All right, we'll bring us back and turn it over to Callie for the next work session for MRSA.
Yeah, thank you, Bill. This is the fourth work session as a board that we've had with regard to AI. It's such an important topic. And I think you remember yesterday that some of the students, I asked a question about how it was impacting them. I always like to get their perception. And then some of the faculty just brought it up on their own. So and I know businesses are dealing with, it's a very real thing. So, this work session is designed to give the board insights into how the institutions are integrating AI instructions throughout students' degree experience. It will be about a 15-minute presentation with time for questions and discussions to follow. And I'm going to turn it over to Jonathan Ashley, and I'll let him introduce himself.
Thanks, Chair Roach, Vice President Gilbert, members of the board. I'm Jonathan Lashley, Deputy Chief Academic Officer for the board office. And I'm in an awkward position today because I'm much more accustomed to presenting at the end of the day. And I'm also not even presenting. I'm just introducing our presenters today who are joining us by Zoom. Idaho, as you mentioned, we've had 4 work sessions or presentations to the board around AI. I suspect this won't be our last, but for good reason, because Idaho has quickly emerged as a real leader in the thoughtful integration of AI, AI literacy, and AI readiness as part of our curriculum and pedagogy. And so I'm thrilled to hand this off to 3 much more knowledgeable folks who we have locally. The first of which is Liza Long. She'll represent more of the statewide perspective because just like any other academic affairs initiative, this really is a collaborative effort that starts from the bottom up and the top down in terms of resources, conversation, active innovation in the classroom. And then her counterparts, who are going to just be offering some case studies that are specific to 2 institutions, but really they're generalizable because this has been such a concerted and shared effort across all 8 of our institutions. Representing some of the 4-year university tactics will be Kevin Rink from Boise State University, who served as a fellow in our AI Catalyst program, and Joel Glad, who also helped lead that program last year. He's at the College of Western Idaho and will help offer a little bit more of the community college perspective. And so with that, they're joining us by Zoom, and I'm going to turn it over to Liza, and I'm just going to drive the slide deck.
Thank you, Jonathan, and thank you, members of the board. We really appreciate this opportunity to discuss what I think we can all agree is a somewhat transformative moment in higher education. So today, I'm largely just going to lay the framework and give you a brief overview of the statewide efforts around AI readiness. And I want to stress that while we're going to focus on 2 exceptional institutions, all of our institutions are doing incredible groundbreaking work around artificial intelligence right now. We just thought it would be beneficial for you to see 2 case studies. So with that in mind, I hope that this can become an ongoing conversation about AI so that we can continue to showcase the amazing and innovative work that all of our institutions are doing. To set the framework for what we'll discuss today, I want to differentiate between 2 concepts. The first, I think you may have heard of, AI literacy. And this is a baseline level of understanding. We're using the U.S. Department of Labor's guidelines here. I believe the K-12 framework also relied somewhat on these guidelines. We have tried to partner with them as we work with higher education. So these AI literacy competencies are foundational. People need to understand AI principles, explore their uses, direct AI effectively, evaluate AI outputs, and use AI responsibly. But we are pushing further into AI fluency. And I'm mindful of what I heard from our students yesterday, because students understand the importance not only of AI readiness, but of AI fluency. They know that the workforce is expecting new skills and new abilities from them. So as we push into AI fluency here, we are really focusing on ways to bring these into parts of our everyday learning experiences. And our goal with all of this is that we will all be AI ready. We have 8 institutions, 8 different paths, but we are all headed in the same direction. Next slide, please, Jonathan. So to provide a brief overview of where we are as a state, I believe you all know, and we appreciate your support, that Idaho was awarded a $4 million Fund for Improvement of Post-Secondary Education, or FIPSE grant, for Accelerate Idaho, which is our statewide AI-ready teaching and learning approach. And it's truly an amazing opportunity to get to work with all of the institutions to partner on best practices and innovation. So this grant is $4 million over 4 years, and we are focusing on advancing the understanding and use of AI in post-secondary education through creating that literacy approach. This is absolute priority 1. Part of what we've done is focused on pass-through grants to our 8 Idaho institutions of higher education. We have created a statewide teaching and learning with technology committee, the TLTC, and we are funding student-facing technology at all 8 of our institutions. You already heard Jonathan mention the AI Catalyst program. Both Kevin and Joel have been instrumental in shaping the first year of this program, which predates the grant. The grant is enabling us to expand the program to 2 faculty champions for each institution. And we are going to continue to provide statewide programming, which we've already done. And also, we are going to expand our virtual AI conference into an annual Digital Learning Institute beginning in summer of 2027. Finally, we have our AI Innovation Awards. We just received 17 proposals. We have at least 1 proposal from all 8 of our institutions. And these proposals are currently under review from the Teaching and Learning with Technology Committee. We are looking at general education as a way to integrate AI rather than having standalone AI programs, which are of course important. We also feel that AI literacy and AI fluency need to touch students at every single level of their education. So these general education GEM micro grants will assist instructors in incorporating AI literacy and fluency throughout the program. And to see what this is already looking like, I would like to turn things over, Jonathan, next slide, to Kevin Rank, who is a continuing AI catalyst and has done some truly innovative work at Boise State University. Kevin, take it away.
Good morning, everybody, and thank you, members of the board, for inviting us to speak about AI in higher education. I'm Kevin Rank. After 25 years in industry, I now teach IT management in Boise State's College of Business and Economics. I teach a course focused on AI and another on business intelligence, a required technology course that every business major must take. I also serve, as was stated, as an AI catalyst. I'm also the Kobe College's AI fellow. These roles give me a close view on how students are actually using AI, where they feel confident, and where they need some help. Today, I want to answer one question: what does AI mean for our students? Next slide. So when we talk about AI fluency, I mean how students can actually use AI. They know how to use it to check their work. They know when to set it aside. Students don't develop that judgment in one workshop or one class. They need repeated practice, just as they do with writing. We start with the access and basic guidance. Later, students meet AI in ethics, writing, workplace, and major specific courses. The context matters. A nursing student must protect patient and health data. A business student must use AI to solve workplace problems. And cybersecurity student will face a kind of a different set of risks. Boise State offers AI classes in sports, education, business, health, business, I said it twice, and workforce training programs. Students learn more when they practice with AI where they will be using it. AI will appear in more job descriptions and job titles, which is why AI fluency must be woven in and not tacked on. Next slide. In the standard nursing pathways, every student takes Nursing 224, which covers healthcare technology and informatics. In the standard business pathway, every student takes ITM 310, where students encounter generative AI as well. Each semester, the College of Business offers 9 sections of that course alone. These are not standalone AI classes. Students encounter AI inside the education they already need for their profession. Programs in digital innovation, health data, public health, and data science also require AI-related work. Faculty across campus learn from one another and improve how we teach it. AI is becoming one of the normal student is part of the normal student experience. It is also creating new careers. At Boise State, our job is to prepare our students to write the job descriptions. Over the next slide. Over the past few years, I've collected 915 student comments about AI and cheating. In my 2025 classes, 317 students answered the question directly. 25% said that they had used AI to cheat, 37% had said no, they had not, and 38% said maybe. These are classroom responses, not campus-wide misconduct rate. Students who answered yes most often cited looking up answers or writing essays. They generally knew they'd crossed the line. Students who answered maybe described using AI to understand difficult concepts or instructions, brainstorm, or check their work. The tools were often the same, the purposes were different. The yes group was more likely to use AI to finish the work. The maybe group was more likely to use it to understand the work, but they weren't sure whether it was allowed. That is why that 38% really matters. Students need clear rules for each assignment. What AI can do, what they must disclose, and what work they must complete themselves. Many students also said that different rules from class to class or no rules at all made those boundaries difficult to follow. Clear rules matter. Students also need AI mentors, not just AI monitors. Next slide. From May 2025 to May 2026, we counted more than 100 public OpenAI and ChatGPT updates and more than 200 across Google's Gemini ecosystem. No course revision process can keep pace with that. In my AI class, I sometimes update the slides the day I teach them. I saw that firsthand this spring. At the beginning of the semester, I discussed OpenAI's Sora 2 with my students. On April 26, OpenAI discontinued the Sora web and app experiences. We can't organize AI education around today's buttons. We have to teach students how to direct AI, verify its work, and decide when human judgment should take over. Those skills remain even while the technology changes. Access is the next challenge. Employers are moving towards agentic AI. It doesn't simply help with one task. It can carry from step to step to the next. Students must know what problems they're solving, how to direct AI through the work, and how to check those results. They must protect sensitive information and remain responsible for the final decision. AI can make weak work look polished. We need to teach students to tell the difference. That is what we call taste in an AI world. The buttons move. Our job is to build judgment that lasts.
And now we'll turn it over to Joel Glad, who was our AI statewide lead and is going to talk about what the good work that they're doing at the College of Western Idaho.
Thanks, Eliza. I was a State Board AI lead last year, and then I'm the chair of integrated studies at CWI, oversee general studies, philosophy, and our first year experience. Next slide. As Kevin mentioned, this is really about having multiple touch points. Just a single module, micro-credential is not going to really lead to what we call or consider AI literacy, AI fluency. And so I'm just going to focus on how we approach this strategically at CWI. I think we've done an excellent job of thinking through the student life cycle and where AI readiness should play into this. Next slide. So our standing student support, kind of our through line throughout the student life cycle, is our Writing and AI Literacy Center. This launched last year, and they're putting a lot of money and time and effort into building this out. Gigi Smith there is doing an excellent job. All these efforts really been backed by Provost fairly strongly. When it comes to the student life cycle, we're a community college, so much of the degree is composed of gen ed outcomes. We've been thinking about, okay, how do we approach this through the gen ed lens? And so I have this that focus on the left-hand side here is how we're hitting this. So we have our first year experience course, which actually introduces students to gen ed, student success at CWI. And we've incorporated a strong, very robust AI training. We started rolling that out in fall of 2023. And I think this was one of the first programs across the nation that actually began an AI training that early. Liza and I actually presented at a conference, a first year experience conference on this. And we've continued to update it every year. This kind of training has to be updated every year. Version 3.0 is going to roll out next spring. It's mapping to all 5 outcomes expected by the Department of Labor AI literacy framework, the same framework that I believe K-12 has adopted at the state level. And we've been tracking the K-12 AI standards to make sure it's kind of a bridge between what's going on at K-12 and then CWI. And CWI 101, the AI training in there is that bridge. We've also we've included a survey since fall 2023 to capture student sentiment around this. Again, this is this is a first year experience course. Students are trying to figure out, okay, what is college, but also what is AI in college? And we're trying to make sure that our training is tailored to our community. It's not tone deaf or meeting students where they're at. And so I think this might be the longest running national survey for AI sentiment in a college organization as well. And then the other aspects, so that's our foundation, our entry points. For ethics and Gem 5, we have Philosophy 123. This allows students to work critically with AI tools while fulfilling the Gen Ed ethics and Gem 5 requirements. And then the other major touch point is our Gen Ed information literacy outcome, also general education here. We updated that last year, and it's going to go into effect this fall to include AI-related outcomes. This is a strategy that a number of other institutions are approaching through updating information literacy. We decided to go that route. This outcome is taught primarily by English and Comm, and so this is where we're putting money. We're part of the FIPSI grant dedicated to Gem 5 training and support is going towards these efforts of updating English and Comm to provide that time and money for faculty to develop according to that new outcome. And then finally, general studies. This is our second largest degree at CWI. It's most commonly chosen by dual enroll students. This is going to provide an AI emphasis. We're proposing to provide an AI emphasis by fall of 2027. It would include a new course, AI in the workplace. It would be mapped to Gen Ed outcomes. But it would be it would be focused, provide a pathway for students who want to focus more tightly focus on AI in the workplace. And then we do have on the CTE side, we have AI and cloud computing. And then finally, to provide clear framework and guidance for faculty as they develop these new outcomes, new assignments. We have an AI policy that we recently launched the end of last year. Still uneven. Actually, go to the next slide if you can. I can focus on the uneven parts here. So this is projecting AI literacy reach over the next 2 years. 97% basically is this actually includes CTE, but all non-dual students would have some kind of touch point if we include CWI 101, Philosophy 123, and the English and Comm updates. The gap that we're seeing right now is in CTE. That does need to be, we're trying to figure out how to treat that separately, and we are expected to see some introduction to AI within a few of the programs, and that's going to bump the number up from 12% to 23%. Next slide. So capacity constraint, our main challenge is really, I think it boils down to one is time and money for faculty to develop, to be trained on hey, what does it mean to become AI ready or develop an AI informed course. That's kind of how I see it. Aside from the major touch points, it really needs to, there are things that all faculty should be doing at the very least at the program level, and then programs have to figure out, okay, within a program, which courses need to update certain assessments. This takes a lot of money and it takes a lot of time to do that. So I think that's one of our challenges, the capacity to provide those funds and that time for our faculty. Tool access and costs, Kevin mentioned this, this is kind of linked with pace of change. A lot of the momentum right now, the excitement where work is actually getting done is within agent harnesses like Cloud Code, Cowork, Codex, right? I mean, Microsoft Cowork is actually a really excellent product right now. But how do you provide? So for me, the hard problem is how do you give access to the AI that students will actually encounter in the workplace, especially in the workplace like 1 year, 2 years from now? It's a challenge to scale that across an organization just because of how expensive, how much compute it takes to roll out agentic AI. I can end there.
Great, and with that, we have time for questions and discussion. We have a couple questions to seed this, but one takeaway or theme that I think is really important to emphasize here is that this work is already well underway, because this is not the first technological disruption we face in higher ed. It won't be the last. We have a playbook for it, and a lot of it is based in how multidisciplinary and technology-oriented modern discussions of literacy and fluency are. And so with that, what questions do you have? What thoughts? How can we support you further?
Open up to questions. Kelly?
Excellent presentation. I feel like the approach you're taking is really good. Just trying to integrate it into the general education courses so that there are touch points. I'm glad you're focused in on CTE there at CWI. That's really important. I can see how that would be an area where it would be highly utilized. So thank you for your attention to that. Yeah, and then I just would have to think we're one of the leaders around the nation in this space. Thank goodness for that grant. But we have several business people here that it's highly impacting their business. So yeah, it's critically important that we're embracing this work.
Bill?
If I may, Chair Gilbert. Liza, can you talk a little bit more in detail about the process attached to the FIPSI grant? Because I know there's been a lot of collaboration and thought going into how those funds are utilized and distributed, and I think it would be valuable for the board to understand that, since that was such a critical investment from the federal government in our system.
Absolutely, I'm happy to talk about it. I think it helps us to think about the grant with two different tracks. So track one is what I'm calling allocated funds, and all of your institutions participated in March and provided a budget for me for how you wanted to spend student-facing technology funding, the general education micro grants that I mentioned, and the AI Catalyst funding. I asked each institution to fund a minimum of 2 catalysts for our AI Catalyst program. You can see the results with Kevin and Joel for why this is such an important program. But that's track one, that's allocated funding, and every institution got some portion of the FIPSI award money through that. The second main pass-through piece of the grant is what I'm calling track two, and it's our AI Innovation Awards. That on the slide where I mentioned that we had 17 proposals submitted, I think that speaks to exactly what Board Member Roach was talking about, that we are leaders in this space. We have some very strong and competitive applications. We're reviewing them right now. Track two is competitive. Track one was allocated. So with allocated, everyone gets some money. With the competitive awards, we truly are treating them as competitive awards. It is possible that one institution might earn all three, depending on the review process, the competitive review process for the grant. Those are the main components of the $4 million. We have some money allocated for that Digital Learning Institute that I mentioned. We did have to set aside funds for an external evaluator. That's just part of a federal grant. And we also set aside some money for an accessibility coordinator and evaluator, because some of you may be aware of Title II and those compliance requirements. So having an external expert in that area, we think will be valuable to review materials that are created through the grant. One thing I love about federal grants is that all of the work that is created through this program will be openly licensed. And part of the reason I've loved being an educator in Idaho and love working with the state board now is our commitment to open, accessible educational resources for students. So I love that the work we create here in Idaho can be shared out much more broadly. Do you have more specific questions about the grant, or does that help to clarify how the money's being allocated?
Chair Gilbert, Liza, can you speak a little bit to the competitive review process? So who will participate in that to help make the decisions about who receives those funds? I know you've put, and our team has put a lot of thought into how that's going to work and in partnership with the higher education institutions.
Yes, that's an excellent question. We established the Teaching and Learning with Technology Committee not solely for the purposes of the grant, but one area of their work will be reviewing these grant proposals. There's one representative from each institution on this committee. There's a 4-year faculty representative, Sarah Matthews from University of Idaho, and our two-year representative is Joel Glad from the College of Western Idaho. This committee is going to be tasked with making the decisions. They are in the process of reviewing right now. Conflict of interest, no one has been assigned to review their own home institution's proposals. So they'll be making those decisions outside of that. If we have ties, we will have a conversation among the committee. And as the chair of the committee, I do have tie-breaking authority, but I'm not actively involved in reviewing. It would just be in the case of a tie. So that's the process we established. We're always open to more feedback about it since it's our first time working with this, but we really wanted to be mindful of making sure that we had a neutral and objective as possible review. We're using the federal guideline, the technical rubric that our own grant was scored on to score the proposals.
Liza or Joel, give us an example of some of those competitive proposals. I'd like to get my head around kind of what you're seeing.
We're seeing a wide range of things. So from funding the type of writing and AI literacy center that Joel discussed at CWI, a few colleges put forward proposals like that. Some of the proposals are more focused on building specific tools like, okay, I'll just call it out, BengalBot was one that we saw that we thought was an interesting approach. Some of them are very focused on dual credit partnerships, which I think is a strength because the absolute priority 1B calls for partnerships with LEAs. So being able to partner with our secondary institutions can be a real strength for the higher education institutions. So yeah, we're seeing a wide range of things from very technical proposals to more broad-based student support types of models.
Yeah, I just want to add that one of the interesting things we're seeing now, and I think we're seeing this in our I think grant proposals and across the nation, is like there's this emerging question with these these agentic harnesses. You can like build things, right, with people just with a little bit of knowledge or a lot of technical knowledge could do a lot more. And we're seeing in some of the proposals building out aspects of their infrastructure, things they could not have done even a year ago. They're proposing this like, hey, we need money and time to do this, but we can build this service. And this is a key decision institutions are making now. Like, do we build this or do we buy it? So it's kind of fascinating to track that.
So that actually leads to a second question that I had for Kevin, for you and Joel, because it's something that that compute cost, for like in a business like mine, the relative cost, I can pull so much expense out, and so we're setting our teams free to be very aggressive on how they're using that harness, and how that because the cost of compute is so small relative to what we're obviating. But I hadn't really thought about for you guys, and for setting the students free, that cost of compute is non-trivial potentially. So this grant can be used for some of that, but I guess maybe that's part of it in a proposal award. But how do you over time manage that cost, especially if you're trying to encourage the students to be native and literate in not just like basic kind of users, but in sort of much more around agentic coding and those kinds of things? Like, I hadn't really thought about that till David, we were talking about it last night. I went back and it's an easy trade-off for David or me in business. I don't see that there. Can you talk me through how you start thinking through that?
I can talk a little bit about Boise State. We're very lucky. For the last year or so, we've had a project called BoiseState.ai, and that allows any student, faculty, or staff to access frontier models. Right now, I believe that it can use Sonnet, Haiku, as well as various open models.
With no limit on kind of how aggressively they use that?
Well, I think
there is a cost limit per month for everybody,
Okay.
but it does give them that full capability.
Huh.
So we do have that going for us. There's a number of us that are actually teaching how to use it, how to optimize it. I've spent much of the summer actually building out platforms for using local compute instead of just frontier models. And that's been one of my big focuses, is how to make it less expensive and more accessible to everybody that has just any computer.
Yeah, I can add that. I'm the chair of the AI committee at our college, and this year this is actually one of our priorities, is to figure out the next few years what kind of accessible and I guess value forward agentic harness can we explore and begin to roll out in some of our courses that need access to that. But I think it's like, for a community college like ourselves, we're like fairly cash constrained, and so we have to be extremely targeted with these kinds of rollouts. And so part of it is like Boise State has Boise State AI. They're doing great work with that. So we do not have that, right? U of I has they've invested a lot of money into servers that can host open models, like powerful agentic open models, but even U of I, like, they're fairly constrained by compute. It's not available to just any students who wants to use these agents, right? And so I think over the next 2 years, definitely over the next year, but it'll probably take a few years. I think we'll start to see a more stable, like, oh, hey, if students want to have access to something similar to Claude Code or Codex, here is an accessible platform, and here's a way to make that affordable. I don't see many, LinkedIn, all the networks that I'm a part of right now, I don't see many institutions having figured this out fully. Even University of Chicago having Claude for all their students. It's fairly limited when you get down to agents, what they can do with Claude Code.
Great, that makes sense. It's a non-trivial. I mean, it's an incredible opportunity, but it's a non-trivial cost. I understand that over time. Yeah, David.
Yeah, Bill. I think I've asked this question before, and Kelly and I get to see this in Ursa, so I might be repeating myself to some of you, but for the overall board. Well, to your original question, I just remember, there was always, with the hardware companies and the software companies, there were higher education discounts. Do you get any of that kind of discounting mechanism?
Is there discount on compute for higher ed, for education in general?
I can speak a little bit to that because I have had conversations with some of the frontier companies. The entire $4 million FIPSI grant would not have covered 1 year of chatgpt.edu, which is limited in its compute for our students.
Yeah, okay.
So I will also say, I just was on a meeting yesterday with AWS. They're looking at deploying Kiro to allow us to have student assignments using AWS compute, and it would just be provided to us and our students. So there are some programs out there when you start digging.
Okay, it's great to know. So the comment's been made a couple of times that Idaho's a leader in this field. So describe for the board what makes Idaho a leader in the country.
If I may start with that, I would start with our people. And you're seeing two of them on the screen with Kevin and Joel. Both Kevin and Joel are nationally recognized in the space of AI education. They've been doing truly innovative things, and they're not alone in Idaho. We have amazing innovative educators across the state. So we are recognized, I think, nationally in terms of the work that we put out. Joel mentioned the training that he and I developed for CWI 101. We do believe we were the first student-facing AI literacy training that was Creative Commons licensed. We put that out in 2023. So that early edge, that early acknowledgement of both the opportunities and the challenges of AI have made us a leader. I also personally think I want to go back to what I heard with the College of Southern Idaho and talking about systemness. We have a unique collaborative culture that is only growing around this issue of AI. So through our Opal Plus AI meetings that we have every single Monday, we are able to share conversations statewide. But even more than that, if we can think very creatively, you've heard some good ideas here, but if we can think very creatively, we have INL. We have access to server space. We have partnerships with technology. Tech companies are interested in Idaho right now. If we can continue to partner with industry, with each other, and think really creatively and collaboratively, I think our state might have as good a chance as any of really kind of answering the question that you're asking. How could we provide open access, large language models to everyone in the state of Idaho? I don't think that it's an impossible question for Idaho. So I know I dream big a little bit sometimes, but I've been so impressed with the people I've worked with that I really think we could have a shot at this if we continue on the trajectory that we've currently outlined.
And that's what I love about what you're doing, Liza, is that you are thinking big. And I think you answered the next question I was going to pose about the collaboration and the sharing between the 8 institutions, and that seems to be going very well. Is that right? So initiatives, initiatives that are born out of one institution are being shared statewide.
I would say overall, yes, that's the case. And I do think that our AI Catalyst model is a model, again, for this type of work where you could hear Joel speak very fluently about what's going on at the University of Idaho, for example, and Joel's at a community college. So I've had the opportunity to see North Idaho College and some of the amazing robotics partnerships that they're doing up there. So that collaborative nature, I think we can sometimes feel like we want to be competitive in a space like this, but that hasn't been my sense in working with our 8 institutions. I've sensed real collaboration and partnership.
Okay. And final question, when does AI literacy begin? No, I'm talking about, you're talking about the 8 post-secondary. When does it start in K-12?
They can go first, and then I can.
Yeah, why don't you start then?
Okay. The framework that you approved yesterday establishes that very thing for those that are in the classrooms. It has local boards adopting policies around what it will look like, and so that it's not just accidental or if you happen to be in a classroom where the teacher uses it or thinks about it. So that part of the legislation and the work that we had yesterday, the action we took yesterday, we'll put that forward. And then I was really happy, Joel, when you were talking about paying attention to what was going on that K-12 side with that framework, because we cannot have those two things separated where here's what's happening K through 12, and then there's a whole different room that you walk into to do the other thing. So I guess the short answer is formally it starts today. This is how we as a board say this is it needs our attention.
Chair Gilbert, may I add to that?
Yeah.
It's also worth stating what's so unique about Idaho out of any state that I've worked in higher education is how willing education leaders are to step aside and flatten hierarchies and allow experts and specialists and practitioners to work together. We see that interagency with IDE because as part of that framework, I know Liza was also consulted and got to weigh in, which only benefits us in the work that we're doing as well. It's also interagency in the perspective with TLTC in that IDE also has representation on that committee. But then also, I'd be remiss to not give a shout out to the presidents and the provosts who trust your board staff enough to facilitate these conversations with people who are on the front lines, managing classrooms, managing many different responsibilities to make students' experiences materially better.
Board Member Turnbull, in response to your question as well, I think that the other piece that this board has done a good job of not losing sight of are those durable skills or critical skills that we keep coming back to, the actually hard skills. They're not the soft skills, the reading, critical reading and critical thinking. So as much as I am interested in AI, as anyone, I think alongside that are all those spaces we can create, K-12 and post-secondary, to think about hard things and do difficult things. So I'm excited to see all of these conversations overlap.
Yeah, and we talk about that all the time. Bill and I talk about this. I told Karen on faculty staff yesterday after their presentation that you're really not going to get hired at our firm unless you have those durable skills, critical thinking skills paired with AI skills.
Yeah, we won't hire anybody at this point for a new or junior role that isn't completely AI native. I mean, and I think it sort of goes without saying, part of being AI native is having the critical thinking skills to understand, you know, what you're using and the discernment. And then the thing that we're starting to empower them with, David and Scott Green and I were talking about this last night, is then to question literally. It's interesting, it's sort of flipped the narrative at our company. It's the young people are questioning everything that we do. And from a leadership perspective, the amount of efficiency and cost that they're able to pull out of what we're doing is, I mean, that frees up a lot of capital to do other things. But that is the expectation. And so I think one of the things, Kevin, I think you spoke to it, and Joel, like, I think your students are going to be coming out and then be expected to not only enter the workplace with that skill set, but then in that workplace, educate the folks around them and educate up. I actually think that's sort of how a lot of this is going to work. Maybe not a decade from now, but for the next 5 to 10 years.
And can I just add on to that, Bill? You know, there's a lot of trepidation about what AI is going to do to the job market. In our experience, it's freeing us up to do things that we never could get to before. It's creating new tasks and new opportunities that are seemingly boundless. So
it's not reducing headcount per se.
Yeah.
Not in our fields.
No.
In others, I understand,
No,
but it's actually creating new opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
Bill, Mr. Chair,
please.
a question for OSB staff and for our presenters. How do we get something, how are you going to get something to a place where you're saying this is what we want to teach while we are also chasing it at the same time? I mean, I think there's other content areas and fields in education where, for the most part, we say, this is the thing, and we do not have to worry about this thing changing. How do you do that? It gives me anxiety thinking if I'm in charge of that. How are you going to do that? And I say that in a kind way. I want you to do it. I'm just curious how that all comes together.
Superintendent Critchfield, I just want to start, but then turn it over to our excellent presenters. I want to highlight something Kevin Rank said about it's not about the buttons, right? And so we are in a new state of constant change and flux. And I feel like maybe one of those durable or important skills we need to be teaching is flexibility, change management, the ability to quickly adapt. And that's what I heard from Kevin, but I'd love to turn it over to them as educators to talk a little bit more about that question, because it's really why you're seeing so much burnout, in my opinion, in higher education right now, perhaps in K-12 as well.
So I would just say we're kind of in an interesting time. There's one of my classes is the business AI class, and there are days where I will hear a news story on the way in about some breaking AI news, and I will jump into ChatGPT and discuss with ChatGPT what I should be talking about with my students. By the time I get into my office, I will have a full lecture ready to go, have it build out slides for myself. I have also, throughout talking with the AI and doing a little bit of research, I understand what the news is. And by that afternoon, I am talking to my students about this latest development that literally came out overnight. I've done that many, many times. And AI has allowed me to speed up my process, going from idea to full slides, even assignments, very, very quickly, that all I have to do is go through and check them out. Realistically, one of the things I've been building out this summer is a Canvas MCP, basically, that allows me to connect into Canvas. I can use natural language to manipulate Canvas. I can change due dates, set up assignments, create rubrics, the whole 9 things. It also checks for full accessibility to make sure it passes accessibility checks, the whole 9 yards. So we can use AI for ourselves just to speed up what we're doing. And it's just kind of interesting. I can have a thought that's kind of funny and make an application immediately. I was watching Minions with my son last spring, and I created a English to Minionese translator webpage and was able to show him and let him play with it. And I did that in about 15 minutes. So being able to have an idea and create something in minutes is kind of amazing.
Yeah, if I may, I can just add something real quick. Kind of the beautiful thing about agents and agentic, they call them agentic loops. You can create one thing that I like to do is create automations that actually help me become more agile. So I'll have like an automation that'll be tied to a skill that teaches agents like, hey, this is how I want you to look for gaps in this or staleness, I guess we could say, within this AI training. What happened within the last 30 days? What happened with the last 6 months? Is there something I need to update? And so I think that the DOL framework calls this agility. That's one of their implementation suggestions. Like we need to become more agile. But I think the bigger principle though is that approaching this has to be like disciplinary specific. There's not like some states do have hey here's an AI micro credential, and maybe there's a place for that. But this really is about each discipline, each field, each business, each industry, what AI means. It has to be taught within that discipline, within that field, within that way of knowing. And I think it more naturally evolves over time when that happens, rather than treating it as like, okay, to learn everything about AI, you just take this one course. Like that's not really. I think that's where you run into the problems.
Callie?
This is kind of a different topic, but do you ever think about the high energy use and of AI and these server farms and the environmental impact? And do you envision someday that there could be restrictions on the amount of time that people are spending, or the incredible cost? I know Bill and Dave talk about the efficiencies you gain. Is there any conversation, are there any conversations in your realm where they're talking about those sort of things?
Board Member Roach, Joel Glad has actually developed an amazing tool that we should somehow share called Your Digital Life that tracks the impact of all of your digital activities, not only your AI use. I would say this is the #1 concern we're hearing from students right now. And I sometimes feel a little snippy when I ask the students where they learned this and they tell me TikTok, because TikTok also uses the same compute and has the same environmental impact. So it's a wider conversation I think we need to have. I don't want to minimize that environmental impact conversation. It's actually a crisis for the efficiency we want to realize, because we can't destroy the planet we're living on and we can't run out of compute. But I'm one of the people who does think that AI will help us to solve this. And I'm not alone in thinking that. So I think we're early into this technology. When we talk about AI, we're still very broad. I think even what we mean by AI will change over time. And I do think that there will be ways to solve this issue of these environmental concerns. There must be, because we have hard limits and finite resources. So
that's where INL comes in.
I don't know what the solutions are, but yeah, Joel, I don't know if you all want to.
Yeah, I mean, it's a hard, I would say the students certainly care a lot about this, and a lot of faculty do. I think we all see the headlines, right? Like, this is a major issue. It's a talking point with, the next election cycle. Like, it's kind of inescapable, and I think this is part of what we're trying to track with the survey we've integrated into our first year experience course. We're trying to track that sentiment and figure out, like, how do we have these conversations with students. Part of this is about information literacy. Part of this is about values and dialogue, and just how do we navigate different conversations around where we need to go, and like how do we interpret like all of this complexity, right? I don't have a simple a simple answer to that problem.
You can make choices through literacy. For example, which model do you really need to use? Do you need to use Fable 5 to draft an email? No, you do not. So it's even part of our literacy and fluency conversations as well, and how we train students to use these models.
Great. Yes, please.
And the other thing I always talk about to my students, we use we use artificial intelligence all around us at all times. If you're watching YouTube or TikTok, the algorithms, that's using some sort of form of artificial intelligence. Recommendations on Amazon, recommendations on Netflix, spell check, probably everybody uses that. The algorithms for search, all of this is using data. It's all using AI. It all comes from data centers. So it's very ubiquitous throughout our lives. This is just I think we're in a moment where people are scared and they are trying to latch on to problems that that may be an issue to them.
Chair Gilbert, Liza and Kevin and Joel, I'm grateful for the focus that you have on students and supporting our faculty in the development of their skills to improve efficiency and make ideally the teaching experience better and freeing up time. As I think about, a number of your comments talked about the time saving and resource saving that can come through the utilization of these resources, and I think about the administrative efficiencies too that our institutions can achieve by utilizing AI, which also I think has really substantial positive implications for ultimately how our institutions are run, and therefore has kind of those indirect benefits to student services and administration generally. I'm just curious if what your experiences have been on that, or where the opportunities might exist. It doesn't seem to me that has been an area that our recent activities have focused on, through your office, Liza, but I think, I know that you provide support across our institutions and advising in that, across all things AI. So I'm just curious to know more about what we're doing on administrative efficiencies too.
Thank you. I'm hedging a little bit with this question. One of the things I write down every day before I start my own work is do a human amount of work. And I say that because these tools absolutely enable us to realize efficiencies in our work. And ideally, that would mean we would have more time to meet with students or to do other things. That's what we're hearing. But the reality is that, especially since COVID, faculty have been doing more with less for quite a long time. And faculty are tired. They've had all these constant changes. And now we're asking them really to learn a new tool. So sometimes there's resistance to that because, as we've heard, the tool changes all the time, and they're frankly afraid they're going to lose their jobs, right? So maybe a robot will teach my class. I think we really need to be focused on humans in this AI moment. And Ethan Mollick, who wrote Co-Intelligence, excellent book, describes it as being the human in the loop. But as I've continued to work with AI and work with faculty and students, I think we need to be the human directors. We need to be the humans in the center of the work. We're not the human in the loop. Cory Doctorow's book, Reverse Centaur, great read. I just read it on a plane last weekend, and he talks about how if we have choices over how, when, and where to use artificial intelligence, it's fantastic. But when we don't have choices, when we're a radiologist who has to review so many AI-produced scans that we can't actually even process that amount of information, we have a new, strange kind of burnout. I've experienced this burnout myself, so I'm speaking from personal experience here, and it's why I want to be very careful and hedge how we use these tools. We need to be watching this. It's a new technology. We need to be watching our humans, and we need to be taking ethics of care approach to our humans. And I know this board believes that, and you're here to support educators and education, but these are new tools for all of us. I know Kevin and Joel are similar to me. Some of us, when we encounter these tools, we can create anything, we can do anything, and then sometimes we can't stop, right? And so learning how to do a human amount of work with AI, I think is also a new thing that we need to be focused on in education. How do we make sure that we're doing the appropriate amount of work and using the AI to do tasks like what Kevin was describing, mindless administrative tasks, great, but how do we continue to produce meaning? How do we continue to build relationships with our students? That we don't want the AI to replace those things, right? So I guess the answer is twofold. We need to be very careful and cautious. We need to understand that we don't know everything in this moment. These are new technologies. The piece that I wrote on my Substack, I said, I'm a cyborg and my brain is changing. I would love for someone to check out my brain and see what's going on because things are changing for me and I can feel it. So we need to be monitoring this in real time. We need to be approaching our people with care. And also, when we think about these tools, I loved hearing it from 2 board members, not how we're going to replace people, but how we're going to support people who are already very overworked. How can we create better work-life balance through these tools? And how can we model that future for our students? Because as we also heard, our students are going out and educating employers on what this looks like. So if we get that right in higher education, if we get that balance right, I'm obviously a techno-optimist. Everyone wants to talk about the dystopia that could result. I see this world of abundance. These tools could provide abundance for us. And we as educators are in a unique position to share that message, to teach that message, to help our students understand the role of artificial intelligence in their future work life and in their personal lives. So that's my 2 cents. We need to be careful.
Can I just add, just briefly, I guess one of my observations from the state board work, or the OSB AI lead work last year, was that there's kind of a huge discrepancy among the institutions in which institutions are actually actively supporting things like agentic work, right? It's like, so they recognize, okay, this many faculty need access to cloud code. They develop a partnership with Anthropic, and they have an official enterprise access. In the absence of that, what I observe is that you do get into the problem of shadow IT, which I think is a corollary of high productivity. People see this, people figure it out. Oh, I can do this. My institution can't afford to provide access, but I feel like I'm wasting time if I'm not using these agents, right? So why would I waste my time? And so I think one of the hard problems right now is raising awareness among the administration. The productivity gains, if you want to focus on that, really comes from a very specific set of AI tooling right now. It's expensive. If you put it in the hands of the right people, your institution will build amazing things. It's probably you'll get a lot of bang for your buck, but you have to be strategic in how you do that.
Chair Gilbert, if I may. One tension that I think is worth pointing out, and we've had some really great conversations this week in Pocatello with some of our academic leaders and other administrators, is at the institution by institution level, what's great to see is where they're using this as a moment to run feasibility studies and right-size positions, rejigger them, reorient them to this emerging landscape that is becoming more sustainable. That's great. The capacity of any one institution to do that varies greatly across all 8 of them. So the tension, of course, is that we realize so many gains, we go so much further together in collaboration, but I don't want that to distract from the fact that each institution has its own constraints, its own resources, its own personnel, its own expertise, its own limitations. And that is something that we continue to try and stay laser focused on, is if our collaborations are representing Idaho as a whole, and that's garnering federal attention, private sector attention, for additional investment, that's wonderful. But also, as Liza was emphasizing, with how intentional we've been with the FIPSI grants, we need to recognize where it might require more investment for one of our smaller institutions than some of the larger ones who can also stand on their own. It's great because it means addressing those equity gaps allows for more consistent knowledge management and growth, because ultimately fluence comes down to certainty, and it's a shared certainty. It's co-constructed not just between faculty and their students, but really with everyone involved, because the software is not going to run itself. It's not going to train people how to use it on its own. It does a pretty good job sometimes, but there's still gaps, right? And so for us, it really is a matter of thinking administratively. It's both thinking as a system and then thinking institution by institution, not recognizing it as a deficit, but recognizing where we need to make additional investment or outsized investment in some institutions over others.
Well said. Heidi?
I'll just add that the FIPSI grant is focused on teaching and learning, and that's really been where the focus of academic affairs, rightly so, is. But we hear all the time about the experimentation that's going on. Just the other night with the provost, they were talking about using AI for figuring out scheduling questions about which classes to schedule and when, or when you might need faculty, or what the peak times are. All these things that have been kind of, it felt like you should have been able to solve them, but you couldn't quite 5 years ago, now feel like they're actually solvable. So I know that there's experimentation going on in institutional research offices, business offices, everything across campus as people are kind of learning how these tools work.
Great. Any other final comments?
Bill?
Yeah, please.
Those would be great topics for future work sessions.
Well said. Well, thank you, everybody, for your time today. I appreciate the work that you're doing. I appreciate you continuing to keep the board informed. This is very, very, very early innings, but it does feel like we are not as behind the game. There's no way to be ahead of the game in this, but we are not as behind the game as most of the other states, and that's a strength. So thank you. All right, we will. Take a 10-minute, the boss is telling me we're going to take a 10-minute break. So we will come back at 10:30. Yeah.
2 minutes.
All right, we will reconvene, and at this point, we will turn it to Board Member Turnbull for the bar agenda.
Thank you, Bill. We have 5 action items and a couple of information items, I think, right, Patrick?
Yes.
So the first item is the FY 2028 budget requests, and Patrick will present.
Chair Turnbull, President Gilbert.
Mike, pull that closer and turn your mic on.
It's green. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, just get
Okay.
closer, yeah.
Chair Turnbull, President Gilbert, Patrick Colson, CFO of State Board of Education. The FY 28 budget request process has been led by Idaho Division of Financial Management, which we are to submit a current maintenance of current operations budgets with limited opportunities for supplemental or enhancement requests. As staff has requested over the previous 3 years, staff is recommending again that the board delegate authority to the executive director to approve and submit agency and institutional budgets for FY 28 budget requests. This includes any DFM-approved line item requests, necessary revisions to comply with subsequent DFM guidance, and also to work with institutions and agencies to ensure submission by the September 1st deadline.
Thank you, Patrick. Are there any questions?
Are there questions? I don't think so.
Okay.
Would you like to go to motion?
I move to delegate authority to the executive director to submit the FY 2028 maintenance of current operations budgets, as well as any division of financial management approved line item request for agencies and institutions to the Division of Financial Management and the Legislative Services offices by the September 1, 2026 deadline to revise budgets as necessary to comply with any guidance provided by the Division of Financial Management.
It's been moved. Is there a second? Seconded by Pete. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
Second item on the agenda is the FY 2028 capital project requests and 6-year plans. Turn it over to Patrick.
Thank you, Chair Turnbull. President Gilbert, the FY 2028 capital budget requests and 6-year capital improvement plans present the capital priorities of Idaho's 4 four-year institutions for board approval and submission to the Permanent Building Fund Advisory Council. The requests include major facility renewal, infrastructure, academic research, and student housing projects, while accompanying 6-year plans establish each institution's long-term capital priorities and satisfy board policy requirements for future planning and fundraising activities. Just as a note, the community colleges FY28 capital budget requests have also been included in the materials. Institutions are available for any questions.
Are there any questions for Patrick or for the institutions?
Any comments you'd like to make, David, relative to anything on here? I mean, I know, Patrick, we've been building a dashboard that gives us a little bit more of an ongoing kind of idea.
Right.
Do you want to talk about that for a sec?
Yeah, over the course of time, I guess, since I've been here and you've been chair of the bar committee, Bill, we've approved a number of projects at institutions and wanted to have more visibility into the progress of those projects. So beginning in February at the bar meeting, I worked with the fiscal VPs and the operational VPs at the college and universities to come up with a dashboard that we've refined a few times, but I think it's been really effective to give the bar committee in particular a viewpoint and visibility of where the projects are and be able to ask timely questions to the institutions. So I think it's been a really helpful tool just on a regular basis for bar to review, but also it feeds into this agenda item as well.
And I would add that it creates uniformity across the institutions in the way the material is presented and evaluated. So a lot of work that goes into this, Patrick and his staff, and obviously reviewed in depth at the bar committee level. So,
if I may, one of the other things that we're doing as part of this, based on board member interest, is where we have projects that include expectations around revenue generation, making sure that that information is coming back to the board, and we are tracking kind of the outcomes on the other side of those investments. And so the work that Patrick and his team have been doing really aligns nicely with that level of reporting too. As we think about overall reporting coming up from the institutions and the timing of it and how we have timely and valuable information in front of the board as the board is making decisions about programs and capital investments and things of that nature. So just grateful for the work that he's been doing on that.
Great. Any additional questions?
Move to motion.
Please.
I move to approve the capital projects listed in the table in attachment 1 from Boise State University, Idaho State University, University of Idaho, and Lewis Clark State College, and to submit projects requesting permanent building funds to the Permanent Building Fund Advisory Council for the FY 2028 budget cycle. And I move to approve the 6-year capital improvement plans for FY 2028 through FY 2033 for Boise State University, Idaho State University, the University of Idaho, and Lewis Clark State College as provided in attachments 2 through 5.
It's been moved. Is there a second? Seconded by Cindy. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes.
The third item on the agenda is an information item only. It's Boise State University FY 2026 athletics budget update. And I believe we have Stacy
and Jeremiah.
Yep. And Jeremiah, welcome. When did you sneak in?
Great, thank you. Take it away. Jeremiah, can you turn on your mic? Just a push. There you go.
Good morning, perfect.
There we go. Nope, I think yours is off. Stace.
Oh, mine is off?
There you go.
Okay.
Takes a team.
Chair Turnbull, President Gilbert, we're here today to give you an update on our athletics budget, and we've been introduced, but we also have Jeff Banka. For those of you who are on the Audit Risk and Compliance Committee will recognize Jeff. He's our Deputy CFO and keeper of our reserves as we talk about budgets. We wanted to bring this to you today because there's been some major events on the athletics front in the last year particularly, and that is the introduction of revenue share, as well as the university's transition to the Pac-12 conference. And as we work through the budget of actually also settling the Mountain West before we went into the Pac-12, we've, for the most part, completed our fiscal year 26 budget for athletics. And while our books aren't entirely closed, we're pretty comfortable with the numbers enough to bring you up to date. And after all of those events, we anticipate ending the year with approximately a $2 million deficit in the athletics budget, which we have reported to the executive director. And as we work through the FY27 budget, again, those two items are pretty significant. We have to set the budget for revenue share this fall, as well as determine what our distributions might be under the new Pac-12. So we don't have that information yet, but we continue to work on the budget. What we do anticipate, though, is that in addition to the deficit that we reported, there will be an additional deficit because the rev share number in our budget was $10 million for fiscal year 26. It's a pretty significant addition to the budget. House settlement allows up to 21.5 for that year and more for 27.
Correct.
And so as we anticipate what we will do, it's going to have an impact on our budget, pretty rapid increase in expense, that we don't have the revenues to offset. Some of the things that we've been working on for the coming year, first of all, are the events. So we've had athletics booked monster trucks as well as banana ball, those types of events, and just recently announced a stadium concert with Luke Combs. So in the short term, we are looking at how can we increase revenues with that type of activity, but in the longer term, to keep up with this, we'll have to identify other areas of revenues as well as expenses, including the ongoing support of our foundation and donors, as well as university support and others. I'll let JD talk about some of the other things that have been going on, but just to let you know that that's what we're looking at. So of course, Jeff and I are looking to our reserves to say if there is a deficit, we have a strong balance sheet and financials as well as reserves that we look to backstop that deficit. Obviously, that's something that can change over time, and obviously we need those reserves for other things in addition, so it's something that we will work on very carefully to ensure that that stays strong. We do anticipate ending FY26 in a strong financial position, even with some of the deficits. We'll leave the deficit on the athletics books because that's the way we track how we're doing in terms of revenues and expenses, but monitor the overall university financial condition.
Good morning again, and thank you, Stacy, for that summary. I'm very grateful for you all and the time you've given me and our collective team to talk through this. Obviously facing some very challenging situations in terms of our industry and our brand and what we represent in Idaho. A lot of what Stacy's talking about at a very high level has driven us to make some decisions that will help us create a sustainable model as we move forward, such as getting extra mile, creating sports and entertainment, the 5,000 plus events that we're working on driving through our facilities this year, most recently Luke Combs, which is huge for us. We obviously had some events this summer, and those events aren't always guaranteed, but a lot of that comes to fruition in the fall as we formalize that process. It goes without saying, we continue to fundraise at a very high level and monetize our operations in general, and I'm very confident in our team and the work that we're collectively doing. I also want to recognize the Governor's Athletics Working Group. That is very beneficial to us and very grateful for him and Jen and this board and your involvement, as it does take a team and everyone is coming together and helping us through this as we look to the future of how do we solve our current challenges, but also what does the sustainable model look like as we move through this and wait in many ways on federal legislation and other solutions that potentially are out of our hands.
Questions? Callie?
Can I just make a comment first? First of all, I think the board's aware that Kurt is on the governor's working group, right? And then also JD is on one of the national committees that are trying to figure out this evolving landscape in collegiate athletics, which is evolving about as fast as AI. You know, the dramatic change that's been unleashed on the landscape, and particularly a school like Boise State University. And I just want to commend JD for the tireless efforts he's put into navigating this landscape. It is no small task. And he's been without a partner at his side for the last year, and now we have Dr. Hahn, new President Hahn, that we trust that we'll have a strong working relationship moving forward to support JD and the athletics department.
Maybe one thing before we go to questions, JD, if you can remind for the whole board, so 10 million in rev share for this coming year. Give a sense to the board of where that sits relative to the conference, relative to peers. I mean, that's one of the challenges, right?
I appreciate you asking that. It is a challenge for us. As Stacy said, the House settlement allows us to do upwards of 21.3 this year. Obviously, we're behind. We are trying to keep pace with those we compete with. And when you think about the Pac-12 and the alignment there, we are going to be probably third or fourth in the Pac-12 when it's said and done as we sit today. And then you look at, from a national landscape, obviously Bronco Nation is strong, and those that we compete with, we are falling behind. And so this is why it's such a priority for us. And you know, it isn't to be, you know, and I say this a lot, we don't need what everyone else has. We just need more than we currently have. And there's paths and solutions for that, and very grateful for you all and listening and you know, working through those with us. But it is a challenging time in our industry.
Okay, Callie?
Jeremiah, I was just wondering, you kind of referenced it a little bit, but is the Pac-12, is there, I'm sure you compare notes with the other teams and what they're doing and gain ideas on, and is the Pac-12 supporting you and trying to come up with ideas and help you in any way, or are you just on your own?
Great question. They are absolutely helping us. You know, that was one of the main drivers in us moving to the Pac-12. It was aligning our brand with theirs. And then when you look at the institutions that represent the Pac-12 and the leadership, and I appreciate, David, you mentioning Dr. Hahn, it truly does take a team. And so we are actively, almost on a daily basis, talking about how we can monetize the Pac-12 differently. This ties into Pac-12 Enterprises. It ties into our sponsorship agreements, which we announced one this week. So very grateful for them, and there's a lot more to do. We're inheriting a brand, but we are building a conference at the same time. And so what it looks like today, it's going to look much better a year from now, and so on and so forth. So I have a lot of faith in that process.
Deb?
Thank you. Many thoughts going through my mind as we've been talking about this, and I think we're going to continue to come back to it. Other things at play right now, there's congressional attention by way of some laws and some different things. Obviously, we've got the state working group to make recommendations. And so long as players can and want to be paid, we're always going to be chasing something.
Correct.
And I guess that's sort of my preface to the question as I'm processing all of this in my mind. Where do you see this as? Yes, it's a growing problem, but do you see a place where we say, hey, in 5 years, we think we might kind of have our minds around this, or is there a time or a place or indicators that you say we don't feel like we're so behind? I know we're not so far behind that I think that we're saying, wow, we're out of it, we're lost in this
Right.
whole thing. But we're also kind of like hanging on to something. At what point are we going to feel like we're in the wagon rather than holding on to the wagon, or whatever
Yes, and
one you want to use?
obviously this is just my opinion. You know, and I want to be clear. I know what what Boise State represents. I know what our brand represents, and we're fighters, and that's what it means to be a Bronco. And so none of this is an excuse in terms of our level of competition and what we expect of ourselves. You come to Boise State to get your degree and compete for championships, and that's a non-negotiable for me and our team. With that said, I look at the Protect College Sports Act, and it gives me a lot of hope. A year ago when we were talking, there wasn't a lot of chatter out there, and now you have from the President of the United States all the way down to a governor's working group that is really embracing something needs to happen, and I don't believe that it's going to come within the 5 years. I think it's going to be within the next year to 2 years, because I know we're not an outlier in this. The Protect College Sports Act, it had made it further than any other legislation, and then it was punted to September, so we'll see what happens there. What we are striving for are guardrails within our industry that we can hold others accountable to, including ourselves. And I think that's what establishes a real cap, and not necessarily allowing the court system to determine what we can and cannot do. We have to have rules of engagement, and we have to be able to hold each other accountable to those rules. And that's the chaos, I think, that the industry is navigating. And right, wrong, or indifferent, and everyone has an opinion, but I do believe solutions are coming. I believe it is a topic of conversation at the highest levels. And the fact that we can speak honestly and open about it today is very different from the past. And so I see progress, and I'm always going to look at things half glass full. I think it's created a lot of opportunities for us, how we prepare our student athletes for life. We continue to compete for championships, and we continue to create new partnerships with you all and our state, because we know what we represent, and I'm really grateful for that.
Thanks.
Bill?
Yeah. I'll just add a little commentary to this. This is high. Well, I called Chris Peterson about a year ago when we first started discussing this, and just to get his insight about where college football in particular, but athletics is going, and what Boise State can do. And he told me several things, but one that was really interesting was there's not a coach in college football that's having any fun right now.
Or AD.
Or AD. Well, he's a coach, so he doesn't care about AD. No.
Yeah.
But, and something has to be done, right?
Yes.
I mean, the one solution that may be coming through is the transfer portal, regulations on transfers, which would help a lot, right? Because
Correct.
then it's not an auction every year.
Yeah.
But the one bit of advice he had, which I think the board needs to hear, is that Boise State just needs to continue to be relevant, continue to make the college football playoff, and keep their name in there. And that's the fight. And there's a lot of speculation that in 5 years, there's going to be some kind of a reorganization of conferences. Who knows how that's going to play out? But I know PSU's, they're fighters, JD's a fighter, and that's the goal, is just to stay relevant. And I will say, by the way, is the Mountain West Conference deal done yet? Is that settlement done?
Yes, that's been made public.
Signed? Still?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
The PAC.
Yes, the Mountain West settlement is done. I believe that is it 2 weeks now, or was that last week? Time is melding for me.
Yeah, I believe it was 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
But anyway, with the new Pac-12 conference, that's a step up. The home games are going to be much more compelling. I think the revenue that you're going to generate off of different events, I think, is you're headed in the right direction. So you're doing everything you can do. I appreciate that.
I appreciate you saying that. And I think, too, as we move forward, there will be more transparency. So back to your question, I think, in terms of, where we rank, and, not everyone is as vocal or transparent, and because it's viewed as a competitive disadvantage. At the end of the day, the truth is the truth. And, we know the hand we're holding, and I appreciate you saying about conference realignment and whatever's next. There's an opportunity for us to control what we can control, and to align and continue to fight. And that gives me a lot of hope and faith in our process.
Additional questions?
Chair Turnbull and President Gilbert, if I may.
Yeah.
I want to make sure that the record is clear on a couple things because we've talked about a lot today. So when we're talking about the fiscal year 26 budget and we're talking about a $2 million deficit, that is not a structural deficit at the university, correct? This is just, okay. So I think that's really important for people who are watching this to understand. And I also want to applaud the work of Stacy and her team and Jeremiah and his team on the incredible work they've had to do to get to that number. I think the university community and as part of that, the athletics community has really had to strain in order to, and make some hard decisions in order to continue to protect the structural integrity of the university. And so I applaud the hard work that you all have done to get us to this point in light of the pressure from RevShare. So I just want to make that clear for the record and for the board. I think one of the other things, Jeremiah, you do such incredible work to create a really unique fan experience. And I know athletics has been recognized for that. And I think our fans look at the facilities that you're able to provide, though in many cases, strapped together with duct tape sometimes. And I think people see that, but they don't necessarily see the experience and the challenges that you're having, both in terms of facility and staffing. And I think I remember an example of losing skilled staff to the Lego store, given the challenge that we were having in terms of the what we were able to compensate, your skilled employees. And so I think it's important as we talk about the strain to put that in broader context, because we know that higher education in general, given the cuts and the hits that we've experienced over this last year, are under incredible pressure. And then that pressure extends everywhere. It extends to the faculty, it extends to administration, but it also extends to what you're dealing with. So if you could just provide a little bit of context around this so people understand what you're actively managing in addition to this RevShare challenge.
So first and foremost, people are our greatest asset. And this brand and that blue turf, it was built off the backs of many great Broncos and people in this community. And a shout out to all of them, from Gene Blameyer to present day. That's who we are as Broncos. And so that is becoming more and more challenging. And I talk about the hand we hold, not everything we can control in it. But the cost of living in Idaho has gone up. We cannot pay what we used to pay, and so we're having to really dig and get creative. When you look at our budget this year, we cut 5%, and we didn't necessarily add some of the positions back from a nutrition standpoint, and that's fine. That's part of my job, and there's always a solution. But that is a challenge when we look at who we are today and who we want to be tomorrow. I would also say, from a stadium and fan experience, and when you look at our facilities, there are deferred maintenance challenges, and so we continue, and the majority of it is through Bronco Nation, and very grateful for them, and shout out to whoever's listening. It truly does take a team, and people have stepped up, but a lot of our fundraising is going to solve some of these challenges that we have, and we're going to throw everything we can at it. I'm very grateful. I appreciate, Jen, you mentioning, Stacy and team, and I would give a shout out to Argia and Foundation. Everyone stepped up, and it wasn't easy, but we found a path, and I know that now that we've done it once, I know that there are opportunities ahead to work together and really solve some of these things that continues, as David said, continues to put us in a position to stay as close as possible, compete for championships, because we know that brand impacts so much more than just our department. We truly represent something bigger than ourselves.
Yeah, I'm glad you said something, JD, about the foundation, because frankly, they've been a significant partner in this. And
correct.
Just to be clear, I think. Remind me, Stacy, but I believe, is it $2 million of unrestricted as a part of the gifts for 26 that are anticipated? To
help us through 26,
yep.
Yes, correct.
That's unrestricted funds from the foundation. That's in addition to fundraising. So, if you take the $3 million in institutional support and the $2 million, that's non-trivial work across the institution. So, other comments or questions? Pete?
JD, this is a point of personal privilege for me. A long time ago, I did play some football, and I weary of linemen being called unskilled positions. So if we could get that language somewhat changed, I would be very grateful. I would love all the big dumb guys out there that do this, so thank you. And again, just from me, I deeply appreciate the challenges that you guys face. And I deeply appreciate what BSU does for the state.
Thank you, and I will work on that. And with current rules, you may be able to come back, if you have eligibility.
Let's wait to see what his NIL would
Pete,
look like first.
Back in the day when the playbook consisted of crossbuck left and crossbuck right, it probably was an unskilled position.
Are there additional comments or questions for either Stacy or JD?
One more comment, if I may. And Stacy had mentioned the work and reporting to my position through this process, and that's part of board policy. So in support of your governance responsibilities, we are actively engaged with Boise State on this as an ongoing basis, because we know the athletics budgeting process is extraordinarily complicated, in part because of the timing of the decisions that need to be made around recruitment of athletes, coaches' contracts, things of that nature. So it is an ever-evolving, actively evolving budget. So we are working in partnership to better understand, again, these cumulative impacts of the House settlement on our program, and all of our institutions, really. We are leaning in to get more information and clarity, and the governor's working group is also supporting in that regard. But we will be in a position to help the board be regularly updated on this position. So we're all working on this together in support of Boise State, President Hahn, and A.D. Dickey. So I'm grateful for the work that they've done to educate our office, and we look forward to that continued partnership, and I look forward to keeping you all up to date.
Great. Any additional comments or questions? If not, thank you guys for being here today.
Thank you all. Go
right.
Broncos.
David?
The fourth item on the agenda is Idaho State University P3 Student Housing Project Pre-Development Agreement. I think Brian's here to present. Brian and team. Mike, please.
Brian, turn your mic on. Thanks, man.
There we go. We'll try that again. Good morning. Whoop. There we go. Well, good morning. It's great to be here with the board this morning. Chair Gilbert and members of the board, for the record, I'm Brian Sagendorf, Senior Vice President for Campus Operations here at ISU, joined by my partners and colleagues, Richard Reith, Principal and co-founder of Reith Jones Advisors, Brooks Pierce, a Managing Director from RJA, also Fred Parrish, our Interim Chief Finance Officer here at ISU. We're here to discuss a critical priority for ISU, which you may recall from last December, where we talked about our critical need for additional student housing. We discussed that with the board last December and received authorization to move forward with a formal solicitation and selection process for a private partner to come in and help us deliver new housing through a public-private partnership. Following that rigorous competitive procurement process, we've selected and would like to recommend a formal partnership with Radnor Property Group as our partner. They bring extensive experience in student housing and a collaborative philosophy that really aligns with our immediate and long-term goals. We're here today to specifically seek authorization to enter into a pre-development agreement with Radnor. This agreement establishes the necessary framework for us to move forward into planning, design, and our due diligence work. What this agreement does not do is finalize or give authority for us to move forward with the project, to proceed with construction. You're not approving our financial structure. We will come back to the board on all those elements, and we're targeting to do that in April. I'd like to hand off here to Brooks from the RJA team to walk you through a little bit about our process and our partnership that we'd like to propose with Radnor.
Thank you, Brian, and thank you all for...
Can you pull that a little closer?
Is it not? Can you hear me?
It's on. Just
just closer. It was really close when I sat down. Yeah, this project's been really meaningful. Appreciate the partnership with Idaho State. As a resident here with arguably too many young kids in the house, maybe some future Bengals, this has been a really meaningful project for me. Just quickly, as Brian mentioned, the procurement process we ran really from January to June, we had 12 responses from national, local, and regional developers, which I really think speaks to the confidence that the private market has in Idaho State University. And after that process, we're really pleased to announce Radnor Property Group. They've delivered over $4 billion in P3 improvements across 40 college and university campuses across the country. And they very thoughtfully and intentionally partnered with some local groups, specifically Headwaters Construction, who's based in Rexburg and has done about $1.6 billion in projects across the region. And then they also partnered with JSH Architects, which is a local Pocatello firm who's done a number of projects on Idaho State's campus. So I think the combination of the national expertise along with some of the local companies here is a powerful combination. I'm really excited to partner with them. As Brian mentioned, we're here seeking authorization to execute a pre-development agreement with Radnor. And really what that's going to do is just lay out the guidelines and the framework over the next 9 months for how we're going to engage with them to progress due diligence and then really complete our design so we can come back to you hopefully in April of 2027 with a finalized proposal, design, plan, financing, all of that. And we've worked with outside counsel along with the university's financial advisor to negotiate this agreement, and we're confident that given the size and complexity of this project, it's on market with what we see across the nation. As Brian mentioned, we look forward to hopefully being back here in April to present a final package, but happy to answer any questions.
Questions? David?
Yeah, I have one question. The students talked about this yesterday, about the importance of student housing on-campus housing. I would say that one of the biggest regrets I have in my life is when I was a freshman in college, I lived off campus, and it was one of the dumbest things I ever did. What's the supply-demand situation look like right now?
Great question. Chair Gilbert, Board Member Turnbull, we have been at full capacity in all of our student housing units with wait lists for several years, even before 4 consecutive years of enrollment growth in recent years. We have a total of 1,200 beds on the Pocatello campus, which represents the entire stock of beds we have at all of Idaho State University. Here in Pocatello, 1,200 beds for about 9,000 students is not meeting that demand. It was mentioned yesterday a little bit that ISU has changed in its demographics over the last decade, and that has been an absolute true fact and is acknowledged. But we absolutely have the demand now from the traditional age student that want to live on campus. Partnering with RJA, we've had some successful and great experiences in doing some demand analysis with our students who want to have that experience that you mentioned, being able to live on campus, have that residential feel. And we're very excited about working with an expert like Radnor in this field that can help deliver the quality housing for our students.
Any additional questions?
Patrick, would you like to further explain what the board's being asked?
Real quick.
Excuse me.
Callie
Okay,
first.
Sorry.
Oh, no problem. Brian, what is this primarily for freshmen or graduate students, or what's your vision there?
Great question. And Chair Gilbert, Board Member Roach, this will be what we are planning thus far is approximately 350 to 370 beds in an apartment-style unit. We're looking at 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom, 3 bedroom, even some 4 and 5 bedroom suites in this to maximize the opportunity to rent beds, and students want some affordability options within that spectrum. We anticipate this probably being a little bit more for upper division students, but also allowing them maybe to move out of some older stock into this new apartment, opening up capacity for other freshmen that come into residence halls as well. So primarily upper division students we see as the target for this, but with the demand we have and the low supply of housing, we know we won't have any problems filling it up.
Good. David?
Patrick?
Could you repeat the question?
Just,
Chair Turnbull, I'm sorry.
Do you want to provide any explanation of what we're asking to the board to approve here? Do you have any comments?
My comments, I think this is a much-needed project. I think it's something that ISU wouldn't otherwise be able to accomplish without having a private partner. I know in many cases other institutions that have tried to undertake projects like this outside of Idaho often find themselves as an institution wanting to divest from their student housing project to a private partner. So in working with Brian, which he's been great with communicating, status updates, I think this is a very good project for the university and for the board to proceed with this project.
Okay, good. Any final comments, Brian, on timeline?
Just final comment of we're very excited to enter into this planning and development phase with Radnor. I've brought up a loose schedule here on the slides to show that our plan is to be back in front of the board in April with the complete package of construction documents, financing package structure, and the complete operating agreement with Radnor for final review and approval with the board at that time.
Great. Yes, Deb?
And I know that you had it on the screen, but exactly where, I couldn't tell just based on the slide, the location.
Great question, and Chair Gilbert, Superintendent Critchfield, this will, if you remember last night, us going up to the Performing Arts Center, when you came past Reed Gym, there was a bit of a fork in the road around that sloping hill, Bart's Field. So this would be right at the base of Bart's Way. You can see the Performing Arts Center there in the upper left kind of background there, but making great advantage of a beautiful resource we have on campus. Our students hopefully will be great softball fans, being able to be very close to Miller Ranch Softball Stadium. And this is very close to some other fantastic amenities on campus, like Reed Gymnasium with a wonderful fitness center, and close to other housing units as well in the vicinity. So we feel going to be a fantastic location.
Thank you. I see the landmark of the Performing Arts Center now. Thanks.
Brian, I remember, I think it was when I was first on the board, we were up at the University of Idaho touring, and they were talking about this partnership, the work they're doing, and I know some of our other institutions are doing this as well, and I just saw Brian's eyes light up and say, oh boy, I think we can do this. And so that's another example of collaboration and partnership and sharing of ideas within Idaho. And I'm sure you've talked with other universities and that sort of thing.
Great. David?
Motion?
Yep, please.
Okay. I move to approve the request by Idaho State University to enter into a pre-development agreement with Radnor Property Group for the development of new student housing on the Pocatello campus. I further authorize ISU's Vice President of Operations to execute the agreement and all necessary related documents.
It's been moved. Is there a second? Seconded by Pete. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion's approved. Thank you all for being here today.
President Gilbert, if we could take a 10-minute break.
We can take, the boss says take a 10-minute break. You take a 10-minute break. We'll be back at 11:25 or what, yeah.
11:20?
11:20?
11:20 is fine.
11:20.
go towards that goal anyway, because my job is to take our resources and put them for our lives. And how right, and engineering team has a figure basically I go Department of Labor benefits as next year every other job needed in Idaho is engineering, construction, and related. So again, serve our state. But you're right. There are many our operation management guys know each other. So she has the same thing, right? You have parking, food services, student union buildings. Some make money, some don't. We're putting our resources to fuel the mission. Okay. Thank you.
And you remember that oh, it is. Okay, bye then.
This ring. Well, for the ribbon.
It's whatever, Bill. I'm just doing what they tell me. I don't know. I'm just doing what, I don't know. I'm following Jen. Honestly, I have no idea. It's just so different. I'll start whenever. Hey, Lise. I guess we'll just no. What shouldn't I wait for Jen?
Can I step out there and just see
No.
standing out there?
I've noticed that
All right. So do you want me to start? Okay. Well, where's Jen? Oh, the governor's here. Hello, Governor. Hello, Senator.
Morning.
Yeah, exactly.
That's good. I brought a flood. Give me credit for it.
Just gotta get through University of Idaho.
Yeah.
And then vote rehab.
Yep. Okay, we'll reconvene. Turn it back to Board Member Turnbull for the last item on the bar agenda today.
Okay, so the fifth
Or
item.
two, excuse me, for the last two items
There's two, yeah.
on the bar agenda.
So the fifth item is University of Idaho Design Authorization, Proposed Joint Military Science and Veterans Assistance Center. Patrick, comments?
I believe Brian Foisey is on the Zoom to.
Yeah, Brian's online.
And President Green's going to come forward.
Hey, thank you, Chairman Turnbull. Our request today is for planning, programming, and design authorization for the Joint Military Science and Veterans Assistance Center. Steve Sell, our new Director of Architectural and Engineering Services, is on the line, and he's going to provide the project details. Steve, if you can walk us through that.
Yes, thank you. Good morning, members of the board. I'm Steve Sell. I am the Executive Director of Architectural and Engineering Services for the University of Idaho, new face to many of you. As Brian said, this morning we're here to request design authorization to proceed with the Joint Military Science and Veterans Assistance Center on the University of Idaho campus. This project seeks to locate the different ROTC programs into a single facility. Currently today they are scattered across campus, and this would provide an opportunity for them to house together and enjoy some synergies and take advantage of some property that we have. The intent of this project is to repurpose the existing Targhee Hall that sits on the University of Idaho campus. A 13,000 square foot structure that was constructed in 1958, excuse me, and sits vacant today. Initially, our approach is to look at remodeling this facility to house these programs. We have had an assessment done by Architects West in 2024. Their assessment essentially states that the building is in good condition structurally, but there are some systems that need to be upgraded and replaced. So HVAC, plumbing, electrical, potentially the addition of fire suppression system within the facility. That doesn't get into possible ADA concerns that we'll need to address because of the age of the building, also because of the contours of the site. Through DPW, we have selected a architect for the project through the RFP process, and that is LCA Architects out of Boise. We've further, through the same process, selected a CMGC partner for the project, and that is Gino Construction out of Coeur Lane. We're seeking $1.7 million to proceed with design. We do not have a fee proposal as of today. DPW expecting that proposal from LCA in a couple of weeks. The basis of the 1.7 that we're requesting today is strictly an estimate based on a percentage of the anticipated cost of construction. Part of the initial efforts of this project will be to go back and, with the Architects West assessment of the facility, do a deeper dive into that. We will be looking to do some initial planning and programming, see how that fits within the existing structure, see how that compares with the estimate for construction that is in place today, then also get a take from our CMGC partner as to the viability of repurposing the existing building and if that is the best approach to going forward. I think those are the highlights that I have to share on that particular project, on that program. Happy to answer any questions.
Questions? Maybe President Green or Brian, maybe press in on how you're thinking through what, replacement versus almost rebuild at this point.
Yeah, President Gilbert, Chair Gilbert, and Board, thank you for the question. We did do a review, and at that time it was indicated that that utilizing the current facility and building onto it would save us about 30%. A lot has changed since then, obviously, and in conversations with many of the board members here and as well as our team, we recognize that we probably need to revisit that as well. We expect the overall cost to be similar to what we're asking you for, but we'll ask the design team to take a look to see if it makes sense for usability to, demo and start, from scratch, or to continue with our current plan, which is to utilize the current facility and just build onto that. Again, we don't think that's going to change much of what we have planned either way. So we would just ask for authorization for the 1.757 million and for design, and we'll come back with you and let you know which direction we're headed.
David?
Yeah, I appreciate that, Bill, and that's the direction that I've talked to Steve about and President Green about. I also understand that Senator Risch has requested some federal funding, perhaps, to go to this project. And
yeah, I don't think we have any commitments yet.
Well,
but he's here.
He just showed up, and I think he's got a check.
I don't know if he brought his checkbook, but yeah. So, and we have raised about $3 million of the $7 million that and I understand the pipeline is good in what we are raising, from alumni and our corporate partners. So, we feel pretty confident that this is a viable project, and any additional things that we get would just, would first of all save the university some money because we have our own investment in it, but also would just create a much better facility for our veterans. So we're pretty excited about this project.
Okay. And I just note that I've reviewed this in some depth with Steve, and I'm comfortable with the direction you're heading with the evaluation. The 1.76 million is an authorization, but you're going to step into that. And so I would move to go to motion if there's no other questions.
Yeah, are there any other questions or comments? Okay, please go to motion.
Okay. I move to approve the request for the University of Idaho to implement the planning, programming, and design phases of the capital project for the University of Idaho Joint Military Science and Veterans Assistance Center in the amount of $1,757,940.
It's been moved. Is there a second? Seconded by Pete. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And the final item on our agenda is the Division of Vocational Rehabilitation Administrator appointment. And I would turn that over to Jen.
Thank you. Thank you. The board has authority under Idaho Code to designate the administrator or director for the Division of Vocational Rehabilitation, which is under the board's authority as a child agency. We've been operating under an interim director, Judy Taylor, since June of 2024. She's done a really remarkable job of steadying what has been an extraordinary amount of disruption in response to the division's efforts to improve compliance with federal law, and has really been a stable force over the past number of years. We have tried repeatedly to recruit for this position and have not been successful in that regard. We've had 2 failed searches related to that. And through those challenging times, the woman I bring to your attention today, Michaela Monahan, has repeatedly raised her hand and has stepped forward to provide assistance, leadership, guidance to the Division of Vocational Rehabilitation. She has worked there since 2015, or actually since 2017, and has become progressively responsible for more and more at that division. She has extensive knowledge. She's on the screen now. Michaela, good to see you. And what I appreciate about her is she is devoted to getting us timely answers, the right answer, and has been very successful in partnering with the feds. This is an incredibly complicated grant. I'd say more complicated than anything on the face of the planet ever should be. And my frustration has peaked a number of times. Michaela has been very effective at both talking me and the federal government down, which I've been grateful for, as we, again, have worked to improve that relationship. So she has extensive experience in the field, too, and so we're confident that she's going to be a good partner to the people who are working in the field to provide workforce opportunities to those who are disabled. So I'm grateful that she raised her hand and is willing and I think more than competent and able to perform this role, and would ask for your support today in her nomination.
Good. Well, thank you for being with us, Michaela. Any comments, questions? Michaela, anything you'd like to say?
Good morning to the board. I did not have any prepared remarks, but I just thank you for your consideration of my appointment to the position. As Jen said, I've been working for the division since 2017 and previously worked for one of the contractors that works with the agency for a period of time prior to coming on to being an employee of IDVR, and have served in progressive roles within the agency, currently as the deputy administrator for the agency. And so I feel comfortable and confident that I can lead the agency forward into compliance in the manner that we need to be in.
Excellent. Thank you. Any comments or anything from the board? If not, let's, David, we'll go to motion.
Okay, first I'll just recognize and thank Interim Administrator Judy Taylor, and move to motion. I move to appoint Michaela Monahan as the Administrator of Idaho Division of Vocational Rehabilitation at the rate of $65 per hour with the start date of August 17th, 2026.
It's been moved. Is there a second? Seconded by the superintendent. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Congratulations, Michaela. Thank you. With that, I'll remind everybody that there are reference materials from BAR, the academic progress reports, from IRSA, Graduate Medical Education Committee annual report and semi-annual report of approved program requests, and from PPGA, the annual reports from Idaho State University, College of Eastern Idaho, and the College of Southern Idaho. Those are all in your packets. With that, if there are no other items to come before the board, then I would ask for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Moved, second? Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned. Thank you.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Going to
We're
keep
adjourned.
everyone in their seats for a minute as the recognized and designated old-timer of the Board of Education. At this point in my tenure, it's my honor to recognize 2 board members for which it's their last meeting. And we've got some other special guests here that will be contributing to my comments. I want to say that in my experience as a board member, there are a few key factors in making someone successful in doing this job. And at the top of the list is having trust and confidence in the people that you work with, the people that chair the committees, that people that bring forward candidates for us for college presidents, and just the interactions and the collegiality is absolutely critical to be an effective board member. And when I think of the association that we've been able to have with both Cindy and Bill, our state has been well served. At the personal level, I say that, and as a member of this board, and anyone that's had the privilege of working with either one of you, there'd be a line behind me of people thanking you for what you have done. Cindy, I think your service in the state speaks for itself. How you keep up with everything. I mean, you have been at critical places for us, in the right places, the right times, and your wisdom and calm nature and the style that class that you bring to everything is a benefit to all of us. And for the opportunity to work with you has just been really such a joy for all of us. Bill, you and I, we got appointed by the governor to his task force, and I have learned so much from you as a leader, starting with the word discipline. There's certain key words and focus. I think one of your legacies for me and for everyone that served with you is how we focus on the goals and how we do that in an efficient way. And with that discipline, it really does, it does take that at this level to be able to accomplish that. And when we started this, neither one of us had grandchildren, and now we both do. It feels like that's been 100 years ago. But your contributions as we work through those ideas that still matter from 6-ish years ago or whatever, and the level of expertise that you have brought to all of us looking at budgets. And I cannot overuse the word leadership enough in referring to either one of you. Thank you for what you've done. And I'm going to read something now because it's well written, and I want to make sure I don't mess it up. Today we want to recognize two valued members of the Idaho State Board of Education, Bill Gilbert and Cindy Sidaway, whose terms are ending. Bill and Cindy, these pens were crafted from the wood of a remarkable tree planted at the University of Idaho by President Theodore Roosevelt in 1911. For more than a century, that tree stood as a living witness to generations of Idaho students, leaders, and public servants before it fell during a windstorm last winter. It seems especially fitting that part of it should now be placed in your hands. Like that tree, your service has been deeply rooted in Idaho and dedicated to creating opportunities for generations to come. May these pens remind you that although a season of service may end, its influence continues in the decisions made, the lives touched, and the future that is written because of your leadership. On behalf of the board and the people of Idaho, thank you for your wisdom, dedication, and lasting service. I would invite our governor up to address his appointees. And of course, any other remarks by board members are invited.
Well, we'll let the record reflect I brought rain. But my traveling partner isn't a big fan of traveling in rough weather, so suck it up, Senator. First, for the whole board, if you read the Constitution and look at and we're very unique. Idaho is one of the only states where one board does K through careers, and this board has done an incredible job. If you look at where Idaho is with our rising enrollment, with our go-on rates going up, with increases in wages, with increases in personal income, what this board does with your partners the president's here. It was interesting, the last thing you did was to make a hire. That's one of the big jobs of the state board, is to vet the candidates, motivate the candidates, retain the candidates, do what's important for the state of Idaho. That's your number one job. And then in conjunction with the superintendent, all the great work we do in K-12 education. I can go on and on about compensation, literacy, all of those things. But one thing this board has been steadfast in is their support for our launch program. What's taking place in Idaho right now is phenomenal. And this board has been not only on board, but some of the largest promoters of it. And we will have generations of kids in Idaho who it will change their lives. It will change their trajectory. It will change the business environment. All things that the people of Idaho. So for me, from the whole state, thank you for your service, and especially my good friends, Bill and Cindy. I knew Bill when he was a student promoter for the University of Idaho, and I've known Cindy significantly longer than that. And it's interesting that four of your board members were on my transition committee when we did the transition. And I often get asked by other governors, what's your secret? I says, select really good people for your transition committee. Those hires you make in the first month of your administration and subsequent are incredibly important. And so it's no surprise to me that my success is very definitely tied to the quality of people and the hard work of the people that served on my transition committee. Bill and I go way, way back. Cindy and I go way, 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 way back. Pete and I kind of go back a little bit too. David, you're the outlier. But it is phenomenal to me that the people of Idaho don't understand, don't grasp the incredible work. Bill, your work that you've been here in the trenches all along, you know, Cindy's job, whether it was on a search committee, whether it was doing the other board work, but particularly representing rural Idaho. The people of Idaho have to have confidence in the board, and having somebody with Cindy's ties to the land, ties to very small communities, very small school districts is what it's all about. And I just want to thank you, you two in particular, for your incredible service and what you've done for the state of Idaho. So thank you very much.
May I? This is a melancholy moment for me. And I've appreciated getting to know you, Cindy. We're fellow Eastern Idahoans. I was born and raised on this side of the state. I don't know a thing about sheep. I can't relate there, but your smile is infectious. Your service is outstanding, and so you'll be missed. Bill's been a little bit, well, he's been a lot of it. He's been my mentor coming onto the board. He's taught me the ropes. And the skill set that Bill brings to this board, I don't think can be replaced, really. He's tireless, he's insightful, he's strategic, he's analytic. All of the things that have made his business successful have been brought to this state in higher education and K through 12. And I don't think I can overstate the impact you've had on this board, on the state, and particularly on me. And so I'll miss you. I'll miss you both.
Almost. I've been in the seat for just over a year now, and Cindy, someday I hope to have your patience and grace and poise, but your encouragement to me in this role has meant a lot. And you always seem to see people when they need that extra oomph, need that extra piece of encouragement, and the thoughtfulness that you bring is just really been extraordinarily valuable to me. And I wish we had had more time together because the success of your tenure on the board has really been remarkable to see. And I think we see that even at ISU today, right, with the success of President Wagner and the team here, and that's a legacy that you carry through your participation in that search. You know, Bill, I will honestly say that when I was inside Boise State, I found you infuriating because you ask really difficult questions and held us very much accountable. And to be on the other side now and to see your loyalty to the system and how much you've supported me personally in my professional development, and how much you've pushed me and encouraged me, and it's been one of the best experiences I've had in my professional life. And I'm just really grateful to have learned from you during this time, especially as we head into some real challenges for higher education, especially related to the financial position of our institutions. And I feel like, again, your legacy will carry through. So just thank you for your commitment to Idaho and to us and to me.
Just very quickly, and this will be personal, I'm not going to have anyone to talk ag with anymore, so that depresses me to a degree. And Bill, even though you were in the wrong fraternity, I've always admired you, and I appreciate everything you've done for us. Thank you.
Very nice. We still have your numbers, so don't think you're getting out of everything entirely. Just as a final note, we plan on still utilizing you. You may not be around this table, but trust me, we're going to put you to work.
I thought they actually cut the tree down just to make sense for it.
They might have.
I just wanted to say it's been a joy to serve the last 5 years, both with my knowledgeable colleagues and our professional and dedicated staff. Our students are they should be so grateful for all the work that all of you do, and all our presidents and all of their staff. It's been such an education for me to realize what wonderful, dedicated people we have, all working for these amazing students. So thank you. It's been a joy.
Yeah, it has been an absolute privilege to be a part of this for the last number of years. I mean, as someone, and several of us are products of the public school system, you know, all the way through from K through college. You know, I'm a product of this system. My family is, my kids are now. You know, the thing that I care about the most, frankly, is the sustainability of the institution and the system itself. And when I look at it, the thing that I'm most proud of is getting along to serve alongside of all of you. But where we are now, yeah, it's a more challenging environment for sure in many ways, K through 12 and higher ed than it ever has been. But I actually think K through university, we are in a better position in this state. We have incredible leadership at all of our institutions. We have incredible leadership in K-12 education in our districts at the state level. I feel better about where we sit, and so to have had some sort of small part in that means a lot to me, and I think that I had a tremendous amount of fun. I have a tremendous respect for the staff, tremendous respect for Jen, for your leadership, and for all of you. That's been the best part, being alongside you guys in this board. So I look forward to seeing where the board goes from here, but thank you for the opportunity. I've enjoyed it.
Thank you.
All right.
And thank you, everybody. Safe travels to wherever the road takes you next.